Well, it's good to have you back, Matt.
It's good to be back. Yeah, last week wasn't able to join.
What is it? Anything you can share? What kept you away?
Didn't even remember. Wait, let me see. Well, was it which day? Let me check here. So the 26th. Oh, I was traveling. Yes, I went to Estonia.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to check.
As Jin said, I was doing spying. I was doing. I
All
heard at the
spy
beginning.
spy work. How many passports you got there, buddy?
Yeah, exactly. Not sharing that. It's a spy
Speak,
job, you know.
speaking of which, doesn't Estonia have a digital ID for their citizens?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I actually had it. They have this like electronic residence. I had it, but then I saw that I was gonna pay pretty much the same amount of taxes if I had stuff in Italy, and I could like just have stuff in Brazil, and it would be even less. Then I went, well, why the fuck would I use it? You know what I mean? Doesn't make much sense.
Have you heard of the concept of network states?
Mm, maybe not by this name.
Well, I
If
don't
you,
fully understand it, but it's basically kind of the global citizen thing where it's a country that can be in other countries, so to speak. It's more like a corporation of sorts, I suppose. But it's something that people that travel a lot and are really big in the tech sectors and such, something that they're kind of embracing. But I guess basically what it'll lead to is probably corporations and such owning towns
oh yeah,
eventually, something like that. Like umbrella corporation. Of course,
yeah.
art imitates life, life imitates art.
I mean, in a way, you kind of already have this, right? It's just not explicit. But if you think about the US,
Yeah.
it's not really like the companies don't own a bunch of stuff. It's like also in Brazil, like especially let's say in Brazil or places that are super corrupt, as in explicitly corrupt. Again, that you just know things are going on.
Well, and
Because
another example was, for instance, if the local aluminum production plant sponsors the high school football field or the school,
yeah,
that's just a lesser degree of the same thing, you know. And in fact, it's cheaper for them.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly. If they're the ones putting up all the politicians because they are paying for the campaigns, even if indirectly, then again, who's really owning everything, right?
well, and
So
that's the
it's a mix
shell
and match.
game, the NGO thing, which some of the talk with Doge, they've discussed how there's tens of thousands of very large non-governmental organizations that are moving money around, but then there's millions of actual nonprofit organizations, and it's a way of moving money around, and influence. So that's how the politicians all get rich, is that they're getting money funneled to them, in
Yeah.
this way. So it does relate to America, right? Corruption. It's kind of
Yeah. And it's really like any state for that matter. Like eventually it goes to that because you need like let's say if you are the guy in power, like the emperor, the politician or whatever, you need the people who actually have the foundation of the place to have your back, right? Imagine someone like a Roman emperor. He needs the guys who planned, the guys who own the steel and everything because on his side, because otherwise, well, he cannot really rule. It's not like the guy. It's not like they are like godlike, right? They're just appointed. So
Yeah, that's a really good point to make because he's managing resources, and one man can only do so much, right? You have to rely on your vassals, so to speak. And so in this case, we have the politicians. I was kind of thinking about the tripod of forces, so to speak, like the mob,
mhm.
the church, and the government the other day, and how they all balance one another at times, but sometimes they kind of gang up on the other, you know?
Yeah, exactly. The mob, or like the thing in Brazil, you wouldn't call it mob, but I guess it's the English name for it. But it acts as the government, just but with its own rules. Like, let's say if you go to a favela in Brazil, they are literally the guys owning the place. They control everything. It's just that they have different laws. And it's pretty much um, sometimes better in ways, but sometimes much worse, right? Because again, you live basically by the strength. So you gotta comply with the guys, otherwise it's not like you have much choice.
Right? It's like warlord kind of stuff. So network states are an interesting concept, but you're right. It's like you rely on a benevolent dictator kind of thing, perhaps in that regard. And
Yeah,
so, you think that's like socialism or something too, because it's a corporation kind of moving into the space of owning real estate and towns and things like that?
yeah, maybe I wouldn't label it that way
Oh, I don't really
necessarily.
know the difference. I was just don't
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, yeah. No, I wouldn't label it that way, but I do see now that you mentioned the network state thing. I do remember one idea. I was discussing it with my Kabbalah mentor about, like, imagine when you already have, well, from my understanding, we already have that.
Test.
But imagine this.
How does that sound?
Go on.
We can hear you, but speak some more.
Sorry, guys. How's that sound?
Yeah, it sounds a little better to me. Like, it's still not perfect, but it sounds better. It sounds good enough if you wanna keep going as well.
I'll just, you know what? I'll plug in and I won't speak too much.
Okay. But I was saying that basically, imagine you have AI, and it does, like you just said, like, it does the best research management ever, right? It knows how to allocate stuff, it knows how to solve problems, because that's the problem you have with politicians. They're acting like their incentives is not to be a good person, let's say, or to make people's lives better necessarily. They just need more power. That's their incentive. But if you have an AI which doesn't need more power, doesn't need more money, just does things in a benevolent way, or in the way it was programmed at least, then you could have like an AI managing everything. But the AI can only manage the network, right? It cannot manage the reward. If you don't like it can only do this in, like, if people mirror what it is creating, but it cannot really act in the reward, right? But then you could have these kind of, like, if I understood correctly what a network state is, this kind of like parallel government going on only in the digital. And then the better governments would be based on the amount of resources they have for the AIs they would have to manage that. And then shit gets crazy, because imagine how the AIs like would merge. Because again, like, the separations we have on a physical level are arbitrary, or are like based on, I don't know, some things from hundreds of years ago. It's not really, like, when you separate, let's say, specific countries, sometimes it's like not clear necessarily why they're separated. And for the AI, it wouldn't really matter. For them, they are all AI, right? So at some point, they could even start merging, and then you have this one government, let's call it. Now the conspirators gets crazy, right? It's like, oh, this is the fucking thing. But I could see something like that happening.
Yeah, it's just something I've kind of noticed. And in a way, unions aren't a new thing. The Soviet Union has its own version of what the United States has now. The European Union is an attempt to have the same thing. And so you need the same language. And so in a network state, I have to wonder, are they going to have like their own language and things like that too? And so I wonder how closely it's going to mimic, society of its own. And so it's almost like a breakaway civilization kind of thing. It's just an
Yeah,
interesting concept that I think we're going to see more of.
exactly. And it works better when you start small just gets harder with scale. You already have something. I don't know if you ever heard about it. A place called Liberland.
I've not heard of it, but the name suggests freedom, maybe. Or...
It's some, I think in English in America they call libertarianism or something. It's the yellow, like, don't threaten me, this kind of
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
So as far as I understand, it's well, it's located in Europe. It's like between Croatia and something, and it's supposed to be like a libertarian, whatever, micronation, right? So they are this very small place which would be trying to live in this different way. But the point is, like, well, if something like this can exist, like they have their own flag and stuff like that, well, again, it's big enough to start something. It's like it was done already in a way, not necessarily in this network way, but something like a microstate inside another one was done. Possibly because the guys who created it had a bunch of money or whatever, right? That's how they got the clearance from the Croatian government probably to do this. But you could see more and more of this happening.
So, do you think that there's any kind of connection between the laws of a land and the people that live in them? Do you think there's any connection between that and the spirit realm? And I guess the reason I'm asking is, if that were the case, then what's going to happen with this network stuff, or are these people less spiritual or something by nature? I'm just wondering about that because laws have given a lot of structure to humanity as we've aged over the aeons. So I don't know, just it's a fun thought to play with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Every country or like neighborhood even has its own like collective consciousness. Let's say it that is like on egregore, and that will shape the laws. So I can give you one example. In Italy, you had forever this idea of uh, citizenship based on jus sanguinis, which is based by blood, without limit. So, like in Portugal, you would go, you can only if you're like your granddad was Portuguese, then you could get the citizenship if you were not born in Portugal. The same with like Spain and other places. But with it in Italy, the guy could be like fucking 10 generations. If you had all the documents, you could get it. It doesn't really matter. But now the egregore of the country is being changed. Well, not entirely organically. It's a lot of it is like because politicians came into place, like new politicians, but they are changing towards this hate or this like trying to close borders, right? This hate towards immigrants and trying to close borders. And now that's being reflected on a law which is trying to be passed to change that jus sanguinis thing. So they're trying to put a limit and be similar to other European countries with like the two generations limit, right? So there you have it. People started to think differently, and now a law like that can be passed.
You made me wonder too, because network states are probably more likely to use like cryptocurrency or something. So this thought of grandfathering in, you know, it's like the OG holders of Bitcoin or whatever would be the citizens of a lot of these places. So that's just what came to mind.
Yeah, exactly. I think that Liberland plays on this. I think that their whole economy is based on crypto or something.
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry to. Oh,
Yeah, Jin. Yeah, go on.
We can hear
I was,
you.
I was gonna say you're trying to say something.
oh no, I just wanted to officially start. I know you guys were kind of on the original theme and doing great. How are we doing it?
I think now the mic is a little bit too loud, at least for me.
Yeah, it went. I think it just stopped working actually.
I could hear that you wanna properly start the space, but then I lost afterwards.
Well, until he comes back, I guess we can kind of expand on the whole concept of citizenship in general. So, you know, So it basically, is that like a Saturnian thing then? Because if it's really determined by the boundaries of your country where you're born, that's you're a citizen of wherever you're born, right? So what do you thoughts on citizenship?
I mean, it's a fine line, right? Because at the end of the day, for the government, it just matters if they are earning something with that. Like again, it's all about incentive. So if they, for example, why would Italy do this? Well, because they have this tradition of being a family oriented thing and so on, and for them it was nice because they were getting people in the country. But now the narrative is that, oh, these guys are coming. Like literally, that's the narrative. People are coming, getting the citizenship, and going abroad, not even living in Italy. So they're just using it as like a trampoline or whatever how you would say it. So then for them, it's like, oh, so what is in for me? Like, wow, I am giving you the citizenship and you're not fucking even in the country, That's narrative they're pushing. Um, so I'll say it's more of a Malkut thing, where it's your kingdom, right? It's like, can you be there in your kingdom? Can you make it work? Basically, can you nourish it? Um, I'll say it's more related to that than Saturn.
Great point, Matt. Keep going. Sorry, guys.
How good? It's still a bit loud, the mic. I don't know if you changed, but it's still a bit louder than usual.
I suppose we could expand a little further. So, journey into the West, then. So, immigration into the United States. There was a lot of different you were already a citizen for the most part in a lot of cases, right? But then coming to a new land, they formed a new identity, so to speak. It's kind of strange. It seems like it's fluid at times, and sometimes due to circumstance too. Um, I just
Yeah,
find the
and
whole concept of it kind of interesting.
especially if everything is becoming digital, right? Like, does it really matter your citizenship? Does it really matter if you can do everything online? Then the place you are at physically, maybe it's just another place. One day I can be here, one day I can be in Japan, another day I can be in America, another day I can be in, I don't know, in the Congo, whatever, right? If you're doing everything digitally in the virtual world, in the network state, then it doesn't really matter, right? Where you are physically, or at least people are going to be changing up. And for the government, that's perfect because now they can control everything. They can log everything that you're doing, right? It's like, why use what they wouldn't prefer that you use cash, physical cash. They would prefer you use their own digital cryptocurrency or their own normal fiat, right? But using it via like networking, because then they can control everything basically.
Yeah, and of course, fiat has its flaws, but at least you can hold it in your hand. And so, I mean, of course, silver and gold are preferable for that matter. But yeah, the crypto thing kind of does have me concerned because you would think you have anonymity, but it's not as anonymous as you might think. Because if you're using an exchange, for instance, you have to provide an ID and things like that. So you got to go through a little bit of effort to actually be anonymous, if you're actually trying to not be under the eye of the government. But see, the thing is, as we've seen with the new Trump administration, they went with XRP and some of those others. They're not going with Monero and Ghost Coin, stuff that actually will give you anonymity. So the ones that are going to get subsidized, I think, are the ones that are going to help them expand on this concept of network states. And I think that might, we, even for a brief period, we saw digital real estate kind of being a thing, which is kind of comical, right? It's trying to sell digital houses. But I think in the future, when this AI stuff starts to really maybe take root more, people might have, um, websites or chat rooms or something like that they host 3D spaces in and stuff. I don't know how far all that will go, but the whole concept of real estate online is a strange one. But we're starting to sound like the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I just want to test my
They
mic.
call it the metaverse, after all. We can hear you.
Okay, sorry, guys. Just keep going. I'll jump in on another device.
Well, we can hear you, and that's better. It's tolerable.
No, to me it's still super loud. I don't know. It's like exploding the sounds.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, it's at least not robotic, though.
Yeah.
Is what I meant
Yeah,
to
that's
say.
exactly that's much better. But the sound's still super loud. But yeah, the metaverse, right? It's like the universe about the universe. It's if you think about it, well, you can buy the thing online, you can buy the real estate online, but do you really control it? As in, not like you control the digital one as well, because especially let's say in Brazil, when you pay for land, like when you own land, you still have to pay for it. So you're basically renting from the government, right? But it's not like they can I don't know, the next day you just delete the space you have. It still will take more time. But for the digital one, not really. It's literally code. They could rewrite the whole thing and stop you access. It's what the whole like Black Mirror like episode stuff try to sell, like the narrative they try to sell, right?
Yeah, man.
Okay, boys. Sorry about that.
That's good, dude.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
this
perfect.
is the old-fashioned Jin recording methodology, which is using my newer iPhone microphone. But actually, I do have brand new earbuds, but they're uncharged. They're brand new though, so they're supposedly really good for this. So I will not be able to use my brand new Shure MV6 mic for spaces, obviously, because I can't figure it out. So you both did a great job. Thank you so much for filling that negative space. I really needed. This is why I have co-hosts, and I don't know where Solar is, but hopefully he will come in, and if he doesn't, that's okay. But we although I would say that Matt and Joshua brought up some really interesting points that all go along with the exact theme. So I think they totally get it. I'm not trying to interrupt you or go into a monologue, but I'm going to give a quick intro, and then I'll let you guys resume your conversation because I think it's really interesting. But we'll just give people a little bit of background. Like you have to give them a little plot points. Okay. So Plus Ultra presents The Grey Lodge, a magician's group chat. Welcome to Hapaboria, Arc 2, Journey to the West, a speculative travelogue for the new American Gnostic. So that is our space for today. So this is a plus ultra space. We believe magic is real. This is a metafictional space, so take of it what you will. This is a meta magical space, so we don't really advocate a particular framework, but we generally use Kabbalah. Obviously, I use Tantra, but we approach things generally from a middle pillar. So all of our sort of logical conclusions derive from that. What else? I am Jin the Ninja. I host a show called Threshold Saints, of which is composed of many of all of the co-hosts as well as the as people in our lodge in general. So and of course other people. So yeah, that's about me, I guess. And so I'm joined by Dr. William Birkin, Joshua the Branch, and Matt Moura, and who I will let them introduce themselves because they obviously do the best job of self emanation, I guess you could say. And I'll do room shout outs right now, I guess. So obviously I'm using the show account, Threshold Saints. So if you are in the space right now and you don't follow the show account, please follow the show account. This is the new show account because there was some issues with the other one, so I had to switch, which is unfortunate. However, it also gives you an opportunity, like a fresh foundation, you could say, scrubbed fresh. So basically, yeah, that's it. Okay, Joseph Reed, honorary lodge member, awesome dude. Thank you for your support. Thank you for coming. Blue Hour Bookery, thank you. I know I have a DM from you to respond to. I'm so sorry. I've been so busy. But we appreciate you. I'm so glad you enjoy the spaces. It's very edifying. Of course, we've got our buddy John Space Answered, who is our Kiwi. We'll call him our handler from. Well, I won't say exactly what city he is in, but he is our Five Eyes handler. So we love John, and if you do want astrology readings or charts done, please ask John and pay him. Then we have Dapper Zan. I like Dan. Zan. I like Dapper Zan. I like you. You are a great dude. You're very kind, and appreciate you. And of course, that invitation is still open. So you're always welcome on my show and as a host or not a host or a guest in the spaces. Of course, you're also a lodge member. So and he also has his own show. I don't know if he's rocking it right now, but I do think he has a lot of really interesting ideas about music. So if you don't check it, if you don't know, follow him. Follow him. Of course, we have Avi, our stalwart Yogini queen. So I don't know what happened to our other two Yogini queens, but we have Avi, so maybe that's good enough. So welcome, thank you. You're seen, you are heard, and you are perceived. And we, of course, these spaces happen in synthesis. These spaces happen in the consent of that magic is real, that what we're doing is magical. It's a magical action. Some of the things we do are sort of chaos inspired, maybe a little magical, maybe a little magical ritual, but just in the act of discourse, just in the act of discussion, uh, magic arises. So I think we'll start by reading a couple Gnostic prayers. Of course, I wrote them. So if you don't like my writing, too bad, Nagas. But they are, of course, parafictional, meaning that they are mixed with actual Gnostic Gospels. Usually I choose Sethian or text, obviously relating to the daughter, which corresponds to the prior series, Aeon of the Daughter, which obviously it was also a Hyperborean series, but perhaps did not focus so much on the geo-ontological implications of place, but maybe more of the story and the characters of which that gospel arose. So, with that being said, we will do a little Jin remix Gnostic Gospels, and then I will let the boys introduce themselves. Okay, here we go. Her word she speaks for the time of man, beyond the archons and the fallen paths, mind-born ray of spectral light, luminous aeon pervading endless night. When the diamond thunder sun believes he is the only one, there shall arise a girl, a shining wheel, alone in all the world. She will show him how to turn the key, how to unlock the gate, and how to love for infinity. For love is the cause of knowledge. It's the Scion of Nuria. That may or may not be an actual Gnostic text. You will have to discern that and find that out for yourself. I told the corpse of Shem, the body above the earth, of an age before destruction, resolute in its eternity. But nothing I wept was fixed, rather predicated upon the builders, who were given the knowledge of my portion and made only in deficit their ark. Okay, two more, guys. Three more. I find in time the hidden nine, she who holds a seed, a princess and a maiden, a name unsullied, unspoken, or what two is said to be, a diamond thunder paradise, a wonder beyond the stars, formless beauty in the sky, the cause of knowledge held within her arms. That's pretty fucking good. Okay, last two. Or last one, I apologize. In your eyes, the light, the witness of the end, apocalypse and revelation, wisdom withheld from sin. Master of the keys, desolation we abjure. We invoke the aeon of the child before the burning world. Amen. Okay, so there we go. Fucking Gnostic Mass. Although this is technically not our Friday night Gnostic Mass, I think it's a lovely way, especially because I get to read what I write, and a fun way, I think, in some ways, to begin spaces. So I like that. It's very synthetic. It's very a little Discordian, a little, a little magic. Because what is magic but the word? I mean, that's really that's the highest value. It's the highest value that we can really produce. So, you know, I love it or hate it. That's okay. I like it. Okay, so I will let the boys introduce themselves. Thank you so much to my two co-hosts, really three, because Solar is obviously a co-host in usually, and everyone who joins is really a co-host because we do this again in synthesis. So, Joshua or Matt, please go ahead.
Okay, I can go quickly. So I'm Matt Moura. I'll say my description is I'm a spiritual IT support for souls trying to remember their password to stores. I got this from ChatGPT, by the way, and it was awesome. So I had to steal it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you like hearing my stuff, just make sure to follow me. Not lose it. I don't post that often, but when I post, I try to be um, good about it. Yeah, post what's in my mind.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Jen, for hosting. Well, you know what I mean. uh, yes, William Birkin is the identity here on Twitter, but you can call me Joshua. Go by the branch and a few other names like MPC 3.14. Just depends on what I'm talking about. But yeah, so I didn't ever really intend to do this kind of thing when I made this account. So that's why it's not really themed along with this. But at any rate, it's still something I'm interested in, umbrella, that sort of thing.
Well, thank you both for that introduction. Of course, I adore you both, love you both in a strictly platonic, hetero-romantic way. However, I do really want to say that you are both like just doing these spaces. And it is to both my co-hosts plus Solar, of course, but it's really to all of you. Like the Grey Lodge, even though I haven't been super active, just because it's like the crazy season for me, like really busy. Doing a new series, yeah, it's a little probably. I'm probably crunching myself a little, like just because I've got so much episodes, so many farm projects, so much gardening, so much work of like life things. However, I think that it's really cool, and I'm learning a lot. I'm thinking a lot about the spaces, even when I'm not in them. So it's sort of something that carries with me through time as well. And I think I love the way that Joshua opened. Was well, obviously it was Joshua and Matt in in dialogue, but they brought up the idea of network states. So I think that's a really good general kind of theme of like what I was even going for. I don't know how necessarily because we didn't discuss it, but Joshua kind of tuned into that, and Matt obviously began with traveling. So that's even how I title the space. It's a travelogue. It is the story of a people who travel throughout the world, throughout the lands, you could say, carrying the word with them through time and space. There's nothing more Gnostic than that, right? Because you're purifying the word as you move through space. Time is strictly conceptual, it is of the nine, of the mind, of course, as I always say. But it is also something that you can be the master of. It's not our enemy. This is something that I think a lot of people get wrong. We've obviously covered this at length, many, many spaces, dozens of hours. Saturn is not your enemy because he is just the Lord of Karma. And at his higher formation, when he becomes Kala by Rava, he becomes time. But that is not really the, he's not like he's not the adversary. He's an adversary in a way, but not an adversary necessarily for cosmic functions. He's necessary. He serves a role. He's a conceptual gate guardian. He marks times in our life. So, you know, just something to think about. But because obviously borders are very much tied to Saturn in some ways. Yes, of course. Matt brought up a great point. Malkuth is the kingdom. Malkuth is inside of you. Malkuth is, of course, your country, but it's also the sort of delineations of the densities of the Sephira. You could say that there's a Malkuth in the interstitial of each demarcation. Okay, so that's like expanding outside of you, away from you, and as far as you can go. So you could say the federal level, or like the DC, or whatever, the capital level, or the EU, or Brussels, or whatever it is, whatever the formation is. That's like the highest, I guess, expression in these kind of very flawed, I guess, control models. I guess there's really no other way to call it. I think that we've been all through too much to really call them anything else. Just like models of surveillance, models of technocracy, models of control. So you're going to say, well, what does this have to do with Hyperborea? Well, as I've at least made the case, Hyperborea is unique because it takes of those American values, at least the ones, whether they're real or not real, it doesn't matter, because you are the builders and you can take of them into the future. You can build with them. So there's three key concepts: liberty, justice, and victory. Very simple. Of course, there's a little more to that. There's Hesed and, like forging yourself, of course, because both of those things in some ways go together. But you would say you need those three, at least, kinds of ideas or formations to really create, I want to say it a Mithraic compact, but that'll sound. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
When I asked the question earlier to Matt about whether there was a connection between the laws and the people and spiritual matters, I think this kind of came to mind when you were just talking just now. And so maybe the laws of a land govern the path those people, for the most part, walk or follow on the tree. So every country and its constitution, as it were, is, in a mundane manner, of course, mapping out their own path on the Sephiroth. So is it a country of great mercy or great freedom, or very left hand path, perhaps very severe, etc., restrictive?
Okay, Matt, go ahead, but I do have a response to this, but Matt, please go first.
Just adding to what Joshua said, with that in mind, think about the colors and the symbols in the flags of the countries. So, like you said, is a country more, merciful, or you would have more freedom, or you would have more discipline in it? Well, see the colors. If you have a lot of red, for example, that's maybe not the most amount of freedom you get from that country necessarily, right? Very Gevura, very disciplined, and so on.
So I totally agree. I think that's an amazing point, both of you, like literally both of you. I think that was amazing. But like, you're right. You're 100% right. Flags are the basis for the sort of Kabbalistic orientation for the country. Matt's 100% correct in pinpointing that. But I also think it's interesting, kind of, because you can look at how different certain countries have become since their flags, and then when countries change flags, that can also be a change in orientation on the tree. That's clearly what it is also. Now, of course, we keep into account that Matt and I do kind of prefer, or at least I think we prefer multiple schools of Kabbalah, but I mean, I kind of like the more, I like a little Hasidic, little Ramic, little medieval. Like, that's what I like. And then I also like the Pico and the Christian stuff because I think that's really interesting and really makes sense logically. Like Kabbalah, there's a very strong Kabbalistic logic to support those conclusions. But you can also see that, well, okay, so we'll use Canada. Canada's a great example. A heavily red nation, constantly in chaos. Nobody knows how the fuck the Privy Council works. Like, I follow political accounts and they don't get it. And I'm like, how do you not get it? It's so simple. There's a Privy Council. It's just like Mormonism. There's a Privy Council of 12 people who literally advises the governor general and the PM. It's like it's like they do everything by opinion poll. That's how Canada's been run since the 60s. Very technocratic. So they run things by opinion polls. So is that Gavura? Not really, but you can see that there's an idea there. You can see that like the original seed was good, but then they or maybe not even good. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe the original seed wasn't good. Maybe it was the klipa, the accusatory nature of Gevra, the kind of liberal, and I'm not just saying liberal as in liberal party, but that kind of smarmy liberal, we are better than Americans identity that definitely arose post 70s. So maybe, it is a severity in a way, but it was already degraded at the get. Yes, please, Joshua, please go ahead.
So I couldn't help but think of the tarot when we're talking about this, because, and you were talking about the opinion polls. Well, we got the government, or the kings, because basically the politicians are the kings of the earth now, right? They're polling the mob, and so they want to keep a balance, or lest they become the tower card, because in the tower card it's a king and the pope getting tossed off the tower. So the other two of the triad, so to speak, you got the mob, the church, and the government. And so if they don't rule properly, God removes them from power, right? And what's he do it with? The lightning bolt in the card, right? It zaps the crown of the tower. So I just felt like that kind of applied here too.
It absolutely applies, because even though we're saying, like, Matt and I think both agree with the conclusion that the country is like parts Malkuth, there's parts Binah. I think you also talked about this, Joshua, is that you referenced the law. Well, the codified law is Binah. That's what it is, like 100%. That's what it is. If you even need a conceptualization of Binah, that's a good one. It's the codified law, so it's the actual physical print book with the black ink on the whitish page. So the way to stretch the law doesn't come from Binah. So people often misunderstand that. That really comes from Hesed. That's even why I did the tweet about Stephen Miller. And I like Stephen Miller. I have no problem with him. I'm not saying anything negative about him. He chooses the best colors, probably, of all modern politicians, in my opinion. It's Hesed, 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 slight different gradients, but really, 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 really in the best density of that Sephora, in my opinion, obviously. But I think I'm pretty good, so. But yeah, he's really good at it. So look to him. So a lawyer stretches. So a lawyer kind of tugs. Hesed kind of tugs at Saturn or Binah. Because perception, right? That's really what Hesed is in that interrelationship, in that dialectical relationship. It's understanding and perception. Those can happen at different times. Like, they are not necessarily synchronous in learning, but they're interrelated, and they when they're together, they're stronger. You could also say it like that. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
Yeah, when you guys were talking about the colors of the flags and all, I was thinking very much of the concept of the emperor card, and his rule, his throne is the center of that country, essentially, right? His authority extends to the borders. So whether you be a property owner and you have a fence, or you're, a governor or whatever, it's just like spiritual hierarchies, how they all have their hierarchies. And so countries are about as big as they get before we have something like a union that then becomes a league of nations, right? So the United States is a union, because the states are actually just countries. But so I think the whole concept of, like, North America has a slightly different experience, in a sense, I think, with the union, except that Russia does have Cyrillic and like orthodoxy to kind of unify their people. So I wonder with things like network states or Hyperborea, well, whatever it is, there's a like a fabric, a culture of sorts that seems to exist. I mean, you talked about values earlier. It reminded me of how I've often asked people like about their values or the family values or whatever. And a lot of times you'll see them on the wall, like in a home or whatever. And so, again, referring back to the word in a very Malkuth way, it's like the words upon which that home is founded, right? So it's like what your house is known for. So it's got like an honor kind of quality to it too. And so nations tend to be kind of associated with certain things as well, right? So like the United States prides themselves a lot on freedom and liberty and all that. But it's our biggest export actually. Anyway, but the colors though, so in alchemical terms, the red and white and blue, I think I mentioned this last week, the key to the tarot, to decode the tarot, the key has 3 teeth, and they're assigned the colors red, blue, and white. Blue is associated with the law, and then white is the stone, and then red is rebedo or blood. So, like you said, a lot of red on the flag. For me, that means blood. And so, I guess with the American flag, I think the white stripes were mercy or justice or something. I can't remember. I'm ashamed to say. But the red definitely is blood. And so, but we have stars on ours too, and a blue background, which kind of is reminiscent of the night sky, right? So, where do the laws that are associated with Benah in some cases come from, right? A lot of kings say they have divine, or in China too, and pharaohs in Egypt, they all claim to have divine right, to establish rule and boundaries. And so I just find all that very fascinating. And yet we're citizens under these things too. So if you think about it, are we like in captivity to astral influences and such, like with our citizenship and such? So, is something like a network state kind of moving beyond that, or is it an attempt to navigate away from like these invisible forces that we've been under for centuries, perhaps? I don't know. It's just the way my mind's thinking about it. So there are my thoughts on it.
Yes, Matt, you can go, but I want to say hello to our brother Solar. And also, if he wants to come up, he did obviously get introduced, and I went on like a, whole thing. But if he wants to come up, please do. You are co-host of this space. If you don't want to say anything, that's okay. Obviously, I hope you do. But if you can't, technologically, I don't know where you are. There's Mario, obviously. Hey, Mario. We just spoke last night. Literally had a show with Mario. So very cool. Awesome to see him here. And Matt, please go ahead. And you are probably the best positioned of all of us to kind of respond to this.
Thanks a lot. So think about it that way, Joshua. If we don't separate the idea of a network, like virtual world, with a spiritual one, if we see them as more or less the same, if you came here, you came already within a certain, let's say, you are already being ruled by certain things because you came under a certain family, for example. So even if you change, like places, if you don't live in the same citizenship that you were born in, you are still living by the same family, right? So that's one level of rulership. And you can keep going on that idea that, for example, maybe your soul came in a specific, from a specific group, let's say, of souls. And then even again, if you're not within the same, physical place, you are still bound to that rulership. So some guys will go crazy on that and then say like, yeah, this is like a whole prison and shit, and you cannot escape it, and so on, so on, so on. Okay, sure, that's one way of seeing it. Another way of seeing it is, yeah, you don't come here necessarily by yourself, so it's not like a one-man mission. So also, if you wanna start changing things, there's a whole lot of other people that would be interested in, either helping or understanding why the changes and so on and so on. But making those with the small conscious mind we have is usually not the, I would say, smartest decision, because again, you just are not aware of so many things, right? Like, because the amount of changes that occur when you make a change, like how that impacts your life, like even simpler things, it starts to get weird, right? But coming back to the point, think about it. If you think about it like that, as in the virtual and the spiritual kind of being more or less the same conceptually, at least, then definitely there's like this idea of like a rulership, right? And then some would say, yeah, the planets or the gods that are related to the planets would be kind of rulers as well, and that's where you would get the influences from, astrologically speaking, for example. That's one way of seeing it.
I know you had your hand up, Joshua, but I do want to respond to something you said. Like, I think you could take it very Luciferian. Like, yeah, I mean, I could go really Luciferian. I'm sure a couple of you would cheer me on, like, big time. But I'm just like, you can take of it and you can build it. Like, for real, like, I think that the Aeon is like we're in the post-conceptual period. Like, everything that has been sort of like like the experiences of the 20th century, that everyone's experienced all that. Like, whether you personally experienced it or not, I'm just saying it's kind of been done. So, like, let's move on to like something new. So the something new is probably more of a libertarian spirit, but that doesn't mean Lulbert. But it also means like maybe the resolution of paradox is that there can never be a resolution of paradox in the material world. Maybe that is something, but maybe there can be in your consciousness. That's more of a Yesodic idea, right? Is that everything can be rectified in the nine. So I personally like the sort of like vision of, I don't call it Age of Aquarius, obviously. I call it Aeon of the fucking Daughter, because that's how I think of it. So I think it's more about what we build upon what has come before, and we let the both the aggregates, the bondages, and the klipas, we let it fucking go, let it turn back into ash, and then we make of it with flux. So I'm really about this idea of how like Hyperborea is like a conceptual, maybe even utopian place, and it's not so much defined by maybe the structures of what came before, but that doesn't make it any less Saturnian either. And I know that's a paradox right there. So maybe also something to think about is like there maybe are paradoxes in the new age or the new aeon, and that's okay, because it's dancing, it's flexible, it's relative truth, but it's also primordial, because when you see it, you know what it fucking is. It's that crystalline structure that can only really come from, if you want to call it God or you want to call it Dharma. I like Dharma, so I call it Dharma. But the truth, the world, the burning girl, all the same thing. All different metaphors to describe the same thing. So, I think the resolution of paradox is, as I said, it's a synthesis between the texts, not necessarily like a theosophical synthesis. Doesn't have to be like all the things together in like a shit soup where you can't, you can't discern everything. But I think it's also, it could be like synthesis of like the esoterica, not necessarily even left-hand path, but of course, I think that is too. But I think it's also looking at those texts, taking it conceptually, and synthesizing it with the tradition that it's synthesized. Like if you want to be a practicing Catholic, or you want to be a practicing, I'm not saying for you, Joshua, but for everyone, like, then go and do that. But also take of the esoterica. That's the Aeon of the Daughter. It's a synthesis of the text. That's 100% what it is, and it's also like our increased potential for loving kindness. But that's a conscious choice, right? That has to exist in like your will, because it's love over will. That's also Aeon of the Daughter. So, if we're just using it, we're just using it as a speculative ontological map. I'm not saying it's true. I believe it, but believe what you will. But that's Hyperborea as well. So just treat it speculatively, treat it dancing, It's not so fixed in the structures of the past. Maybe there are ideas in the network state that are useful to a more luciferic, you could say, model. And it's also interesting, obviously, when I spoke with Mario, we talked a lot about Venus and its kind of luciferic properties. So yeah, there's a little bit of Netzach in, of course, in the kingdom. It has to be. What is the kingdom? It's like the resolution of Hod and Netzach together, right? That's kind of the son and the daughter as well, because it's in Babylon. It's in On Yesod. It's the 4 and the 5 rectified in the 9. That means they all have to be represented. Yod He Vav He. Not an imbalance of the pillars. Perfect harmony between them. So then you can even hear there's a Tipperatic quality, a balance of the scales. It's neither nor. It's not one or the other. And of course, you can say it's the daughter because she's hidden. But that's okay with her. Because it's not going to be for everyone. Just like Esoterica is not for everyone. That's kind of the idea. So, Joshua, to answer your question maybe more precisely, what Hyperborea will look like is really up to the people who want to build it, who want to envision its futures and want to apply political will. Yes, Solar, I'm borrowing something from you. Full credit. But apply, pressure in the form of will, maybe collective mass consciousness, even, whatever that means, at certain points. Okay, yes, Solar, please go ahead.
Yeah, forgive me jumping in here, missing a lot of the context of the discussion so far, but I just wanted to kind of comment on this issue of resolution of paradoxes, particularly at the level of the political. Like we mentioned, the libertarian Luciferian mindset and Lawberts, right? And so one thing that I found like very helpful as far as a way to thinking about political questions in practical terms, right? Because I sort of have this shining crystalline vision of a Hyperborean return in my mind, but and as an Anglo-American white guy, like I have very sort of like uh intuitively libertarian notions, right, about sort of the relative freedom and autonomy that individuals should be granted, like a very very wide berth. Those are just like that's kind of like encoded into my DNA and into my thought process, right? But certainly at this like late stage of American empire and things like that, it's not really clear how I could move in a straight line from to instantiate those impulses, right? Because like if you were to just like go directly at that Hyperborean sort of like libertarian sort of open future, you would be just absolutely gigafucked by all the second order consequences that you would be permitting, right, to get even stronger kind of as you detached, right? That it just wouldn't work as a political pathway directly, right? So what I've had to do is okay, I have that as my goal. I am going to provisionally act as though I believe that there is a sort of resolution to the seeming paradox between what I want and like as an end goal and what I think is necessary to perhaps try to land the plane there in practical terms, like step 1, 2, 3, 4 to actually get there, right? And so what I end up doing personally is playing and essentially participating in a metapolitical like game, right? I end up supporting lending real meaningful material energetic support to groups that I might totally disagree with in principle, right? Like I'm not going to dox myself for giving examples, but I do a lot of stuff that would make no sense, right? And this isn't just me doing it. Another great example of this would be like Alexander Dugin, right? Like what is a traditionalist fourth position guy, right, student of Heidegger, forming a national Bolshevist party in Russia, right? Like that doesn't necessarily express what he wants as an end goal, but it's the nudge, it's the direction that he thinks he needs to build at that time, and then he abandons that project and does something else, right, at a different time. So you can kind of have these like different layers acting at once, and you can sort of like direct your will towards sort of towards like one gear that doesn't necessarily have to interface with a gear at a different level. You know what I mean? I think that's really critical because otherwise you can reach this point of paralysis where it's completely unclear how you would actually make your ideals actionable. And I was only able to surpass that and get beyond that with a sort of detached, like metapolitical sort of frame of action.
So that was really great. Really glad you said that. Thank you, Brother Solar. One thing I thought was really interesting, and I'll obviously shout out Mr. Monte Carlo, Mr. King from the King of Cups YouTube channel, Cassandra, Absolution, digital tattoo. So hey, welcome. It's a plus ultra space, magic's real. We'll kind of take that as like a foundation stone and then we'll move through the space with that knowledge and just talk about a broad range of things in the sort of, maybe you could say, speculative category of meta reality. So a lot of talk politics, which is interesting. So one thing I thought interesting that you said, although I agreed with the whole scope, we'll say, is that you said, do you lend energetic and material support? So Solar, what is more important in your opinion in perhaps new Aeon? What is more important, energetic or spiritual support? Or is it both? Is it happen in synthesis? Is it like something that gives rise to itself? Or is it perhaps maybe that layer of, as you spoke of, the layers are best penetrated by energetic support? I think that's an interesting idea. I'm not saying that you believe that, but I'm just offering that. But I'll let you respond.
Yeah, I don't really see them as terribly distinct. I mean, maybe that's like we would just need to like drill down on definitions. But the one thing when I talk about energetic support, I mean that kind of on like multiple levels, right? Like I mean that just in terms of like the kind of banal like time, energy, engaging with people and trying to sort of, I don't want to say like manipulate people, but to try to get other people in a network of action to do what I want them to do, what I think is in my best interest and usually in their best interest as well, right? But that gets really messy because like that ultimately gets into the territory of like lesser black magic, right? And like there's a certain sense which like you can uh if you contrast what I'm talking about to something like, I don't know, it's like giving money, like, oh, I'm going to give $100 to some organization that does a thing, right? The energetic support you can really like index with so much more of yourself, like so much of your I don't know, like points of attachment where your will makes contact with the sort of like external reality or outer world or whatever. um just again, like on the sort of like interpersonal level, on the level of manipulating like discourse within small groups, larger groups, etc. I feel like you can get a lot more done with the energetic, but I don't want people to understand that as meaning just this like kind of woo woo like vibes based thing. Like this is also like hanging out in Telegram, talking to people IRL, like making sure that you have clear goals going into every conversation you have with people that are kind of within your field of action, right? It's all like very banal. Like when I say like lesser black magic in the Temple of Setian sense, like that's exactly what I mean.
Absolutely. But as you know, I always say the way you live your life is your great work. So even those maybe non metaphysical actions have deeper implications. So I think you're 100% correct. And I think you know that is that in calling it lesser black magic, because yeah, it is. Absolutely. So that is what we have to try and be careful of. And not that I think it's necessarily wrong, but I think that there are maybe karmic implications. Not in every instance exactly the same, because it's obviously defined a lot by skillfulness. It's a big part of it, right? We can't be pretend that's not a consideration. But I think that we have to be careful of overt or maybe gross karmic implications, especially when it comes to like we don't want to manipulate someone's will to the point where you're fucked and they're fucked. I think that the point is to like raise, I'm going to use a Marxist term, like raise people into consciousness. You could also say that's like planting the seeds. You could also say that's like very dharmic, right? So I think there's a skillful way to do exactly what Solar's talking about. And I'm not against that. Like, I think that people need to hear from people who have a more refined, or maybe they've thought about the questions longer, so they can like give the seeds of what could be like more can be generated from what people who have a longer experience, perhaps, thinking about certain topics, more can be generated by other people from hearing those ideas, but maybe they wouldn't think of them like themselves right away. So I absolutely, I think there's a skillful way to do it. I think generating ideas is like probably one of our most magical, like if we're going to really talk about taking advantage of social media, there's something really also beautiful, also harmonious, also tiferatic, also interesting about that idea. And it's also very Hode Rising, something I'm very obsessed with the last 2 weeks. You're putting the word into the thing. So I even when I actually began the space, I talked about how the word is like this sort of perfect vehicle almost, but it's also imperfect because of how it's expressed in the world and how obviously it's understood sometimes, often in. But it's a perfect vehicle to sort of like move through the tree because that's really what the light is. It's also the word, it's also sound. So, yeah, I think that you can generate seeds online. Like, I'm not saying that I'm like some skilled thing. I've come up with a couple cool words, a couple cool ideas for sure. And have they gone beyond a little bit of like my very small sphere? Sure. But I also think that there's like a way that you have to build those words in foundation. And so that is also what these spaces are about. So I don't want anyone to be like, yeah, they're talking about politics for this reason. No, if there's, I have like I'm just a small C conservative, really. I have libertarian leanings. I, but I don't have any greater political like project, you could say. Like my thing, yeah, Hyperborea to me is real. It has like more mythic or mythological sort of ideas embedded within it, which maybe all politics or all speculative futurism or all ontologies have. But I can also understand it very conceptually. So I'm okay with it at both a conceptual and, hey Ashley. So we have Ashley, Think Change Repeat from Union of Unknowns. Just you want to give a shout out. Thank you, welcome. So yeah, I think that's where like my thing. I don't have a grand political project per se, although I would personally like to see more people free themselves, if possible, from the greater network of the archons, as I call them. So in that way, I am very pro that. Whatever that is, as Solar said, sometimes I think it is more complicated. I think this is something that a lot of people who would have considered themselves dissident or very right wing or whatever, Wignot, and I'm not even against all their ideas. There's a lot of really interesting ideas percolating on that side of Twitter still. It's just that it's kind of barren right now a little bit. So I think sometimes what happens, well, what do you do? What do you do in Kabbalah when your garden is barren? You have to bring some generative juices and fruit and seeds and water and love, right? You have to bring all these things into synthesis, right? All things resolved in synthesis. So maybe there is like use in looking outside of what the sort of like thought leaders, whoever those people are saying to read or saying to think or saying to how to view the world. Maybe it's like the aeon of the free thinker. I kind of do think that. I kind of feel like there's a Newtonian, Luciferian vibe where it's like you rediscover and you reify and you reaffirm. So maybe that is part of it too. It's like we have to kind of rediscover the relative truths. Because when things are thrown into decoherence, as we always talk about, it is very hard to recognize what those things are. So I think I don't know. I feel very good in a way. Like it's a little scary right now. Like I'm not scared, but it's a little almost like it's so unknown. It's like the unknown of unknowns. That's why I like that idea of Hyperborea because it is kind of the Wild West. It is kind of like what can you make of it? Not even in a political sense or a material sense or a magical sense, but what can you make of it in your consciousness. I think that's the reason why parafiction's a really interesting sort of vessel for these ideas, because there's nothing more synthetic than the meeting of fiction and, historical material. Okay, boys, one of you go. It went really long.
I think Chris has his hand up, and then I do have a comment though after Chris.
Sure. Chris, come up to speaker. Matt will have to add you.
Oh, I thought I added him already.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm playing catch up. I just recently joined. I'm enjoying the conversation. Thus far, uh, Jen, I like how you ended it with talking about bringing fiction and historical fact together, which is really what my whole channel is about. I mean, my slogan is literally movies are the modern myth, and kind of exploring this idea of the multitude of layers in storytelling through, in my case, film, but it goes, in any medium. So I like how you kind of summarize kind of what my whole shtick is about right before I talked. I thought that was very synchronistic. But yeah, this what your title of this space being Art 2 reminded me of, and the reason why I wanted to speak up was with this idea of an arc and ages in Christian mysticism. They refer to Moses as kind of the like the small g god, you could say, of this current age. They refer to Noah's ark as kind of like a rebirth to this age, as like a when people and animals left his ark, that was the cracking of an egg of a new cosmic age. And the flood waters symbolize, primordial goo, I guess you could say. And so we have this idea in Christian mysticism of Moses being kind of like this head of this age, which I think is fascinating, especially with the whole maritime of it all. On my channel, KOK Eater channel, I have a video on maritime law, very Jordan Maxwell like stuff. I talk about it in relation to SpongeBob SquarePants being indoctrination point for kids to get them into maritime law. But Jordan Maxwell's whole big part of his work was talking about this law of the sea, double speak in the legal world of merchants and merchandise, which is very poignant in the West, and this whole where we would call possibly an idea of a modern Hyperborea space would be, of course, would be America. So you have this idea of American corporation, and legalese being rooted in the law of the sea. And then you have this Moses figure in Christian mysticism being the head deity, possibly. Um, so you get this very watery, very mercurial kind of idea of what this age possibly is, which kind of fits into what I brought up last time about possibly America's kind of pseudo shamanistic foundation could possibly be looked at with Lovecraft stuff. So, and Lovecraftian lore, which is all watery, right? It's all sea themed in a way. So I think there's a whole weave here of water based age, and of course, some might say the age of Aquarius. I don't know if I would agree with that, right? But I think there's something to it.
No, there's a lot of interesting things you said, Chris, or King, sorry. I know that's your name both, Lee, but okay, Joshua, please go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, so I agree. The storytelling, actually, I have my notes here. Sorry, I dropped them. I was thinking about, like, what is the, myth or story, the origin story for Hyperborea, so to speak, right? So I think the American story itself kind of has those interesting mythological elements to it. Was it last week somebody was talking about uh, the spiritual armor of George Washington or something like that? I don't know why I have that written down. Somebody must have said something, I guess, in
It was
battle.
me.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It was something that I forgot to mention before I left the space. And I think I sent
Oh,
it to you
well,
in text.
okay. We'll talk about that then.
Oh yeah, there is mythological lore to George Washington that was supposedly written out of the American history books because it was too patriotic, I guess you could say, in a way, where um, before George Washington became president and he fought many wars against the Native Americans, and I guess he got shot with all kinds of weapons, from arrows to bullets, and he never got injured. He always miraculously was okay somehow, and to the point where later on in George Washington's life, the story goes, there was a elderly Indian chief who was on his deathbed and said, "Before I die, take me to this George Washington guy." And so they take him to go see George Washington, and he goes, "Sir, I just wanted to meet the person who is protected by the almighty force above, because I'm an expert marksman. I shot you multiple times, and my men shot you multiple times, and we saw you miraculously take the damage." I guess, as the Gen Z kids would say, he had maximum aura, right? Um, and I, to the point where I told my men to stop wasting um, their ammunition, because there was no point in trying to attack you. And so and that's why he wanted to meet him. He thought that George Washington had spiritual armor. He had a purpose where he wasn't supposed to die until he got that purpose done. And so we have this kind of great mythological story to show you how um, not just the belief systems of the Native Americans, but also it's a true patriotic story, and it's pretty cool to hear. And now it's not in vogue to talk about this sort of stuff, so they took it out of the history books.
So he had plot armor, basically.
Oh,
Right?
that was a good one, Matt. Solar has his hand up.
Yeah, I'll tie this back in a second. I promise. So, as an example, of like one of the things that I've been doing, kind of metapolitically, I've been trying to pump a good dose of Evola into a fairly prominent Wignite group that I've been a member of for a little while, and or a decent bit at this point. And one of the main reasons for doing so is I'm trying to push the sort of tripartite understanding of race that Evola advocated, right? So he was totally against any kind of biological essentialism, right? He identified the sort of biological like aspect of race, then this sort of social or cultural aspect, and then finally a third and the most important being the spiritual dimension, right? That sort of differentiated between, most importantly, like those who had initiatic potential, right? We might say magical potential, or the potential to engage directly with the sacred. Um, and one of the things that I would like to see is for some of my compatriots, people who look like me, to understand that that Jin and I, for example, and I'm not just saying this because he's half Canadian or half Frenchman, right? But the Jin and I have more in common in racial terms than myself and a cousin, right? Who is like turbo normie, just does not approach sort of the world in the same way, right? That it go this that fixating on biology is a non-starter, and it will set any sort of movement back that is trying to establish itself in the American context, right? I promise this is getting to George Washington aura, okay? And so one of the reasons that I'd like to see this is because, again, demographics are what they are. This is going to be necessary kind of going forward. But also, I would really like to see sort of traditionalist, reactionary elements, political movements within the United States kind of free themselves both from the egalitarian theological foundation of Judeo-Christianity, right? But at the same time, free themselves kind of from the baggage of the first wave of sort of anti-modernist, well, calling fascism anti-modernist is a bit of a misnomer, but the kind of responses to sort of full proletarian egalitarianism, to move beyond the biological essentialism of them, right? And this is all to say that I think one of the ways forward is for a new sort of aristocracy to assert itself, just as it did in its own way with the founding fathers, right? They were an aristocracy, not necessarily in name, but definitely an aristocracy of action, right? A de facto aristocracy. And I think that this new sort of aristocratic order will understand itself as having a sacred character, much in the same way that the Schutzstaffel, right? Kind of, it never really got that far, right? Because the war ended. But it sort of understood itself as a knightly brotherhood, a pan-European knightly order, right? With a, at least to some extent, sort of sacred character, right? That united and differentiated its members from the rest. And I would love to see that in the sort of Happaborian American context. And I think that we will unironically, be understanding ourselves in terms of, participating in a magical sort of brotherhood, right? In that sense, in the same way that like George Washington had, literal spiritual armor.
That was amazingly said. I thought it was so cool that you kind of brought that your metapolitical vision to the space. So thank you, Solar, for doing that. I also agree. I think, as I titled one of our spaces, the Aeon of the Magi. If you're not learning, if you're not trying, if you're not like, that's the Aeon of the Daughter. That's it. It's a synthesis of the text. Like, go do the work. That's it. Praxis. Like, go build it. And like, even if you don't think that you can, I think everyone can. I think everyone has potential. I'm not one of those people who is essentialist in that way. I guess maybe I could say I borrow that from what Solar said about Evola. Like, I think the capacity is in you, and I think it's also within that loving kindness. I agree with Solar that there has to be a loosening of even the first wave of Christianity that came before, but that doesn't mean loosening the Christian overtone or flavor of America. I just think it's weird Christianity. That is really that's America, is weird Christianity. And so just like fucking embrace it, go with it. Let's like I'm going with it. I'm like very like 2 years ago I was like kind of against. I was like, what the fuck's going on? Like I had very maybe more Manichaean inclinations, simply because I didn't quite understand the terrain. But now I feel like I understand the terrain. I see that this Hyperborea obviously is my own thing, well, our own thing, but it was never inspired by the Mormons. I actually wrote like a whole story of a kind of journey to the West, but the Monkey King in America, sort of like Mobius Blueberry. If you've ever read that, it's kind of like, or a Whiskey Jack character. Whiskey Jack is like the trickster from Cree mythology and Métis mythology. So he's inherently Hyperborean because he's mixed race. That's kind of the whole idea. So he is like a magician, trickster, shaman who traverses North America, bringing different medicine techniques, meaning magic, from each tribes to the other tribes. So basically, it is kind of like a Quetzalcoatl figure. Not many people know about it, but not many people know about Canadian Aboriginal mythology. But I think that is the. I think that's. I think that goes along with what Solar was saying. In my mind, it does. So what I'm trying to say is that was my sort of orientation for how to build Hyperborea. But I also think in it. So Journey to the West A, and then Whiskey Jack B. Okay. So those are really, and then Aeon of the Daughter. So all those, maybe that's an interesting way to think of it. Like Liber 49, it's like the three characters into synthesis. Sort of interesting. But I think there's also a Mormon component, not in my thinking, but there's a Mormon component in that they tried to do this. This is what they like. This is what they were doing. He was having magical experiences. He was invoking the angels. He was, playing with the Sephira. He was playing with the seals, playing with the intelligences, playing with the Goesha. Not just playing. He was a very serious magician. He knew what he was doing to a large degree. I don't know how profound or intense his experience was. He was also a master mason. Joseph Smith, obviously, I'm talking about, but that's not. It's not just Joseph Smith. It's also Brigham Young, right? Because what does this all come down to? This all comes down to a few grimoires in Salem, Massachusetts, and who controlled them. So, anyway, so he was trying to sort of rectify. You could say he was trying to rectify the knowledge, put it all back together. The journey through America was one of, okay, the mounds are here. There's this thing. This is a confirmation of my experiential wisdom. So he's traveling through the Sephira. He's understanding things, but he doesn't have a basis for it because there's not a text written. So part of Mormonism is that he was writing the text as he went. Now, I'm just using this as a framework because there was other religions that also have fit this framework, or also fit this framework, and modern American religions. So it's kind of like recontextualizing these kind of like meta myths into the modern American foundation. And so I like what Chris King said. Excuse me. Movies are the modern American mythos. I agree with that 100%. But I think there's a lot more than that. I think that there are specific magical inclinations. I think there's fictional implications, and I think there's also a way that history is narrated. And also, like you guys were at the very beginning when I was having my mic issues, you guys were talking about like the egregore of a nation, and I am gonna let you go, Matt. I apologize, but I think this has a lot to do with that too. Like, what is sort of the overarching theme of the nation? But the theme of the nation also is predetermined by its perceiver, its witness, right? So the witness is the one who projects into reality. The perceiver projects into infinite reality. That's why Hesed is perception, because it's infinite in its capacity for possibility. It can do anything there. It can go anywhere on the tree from there. That's why loving kindness becomes such a important, not just tool, but a foundational idea to carry you through suffering that might be dense otherwise. But that's also part of the nation. Is like what you think of it. So do you think of it as Babylon? And I think that's fucking cool. Like if you ask me, Jin, I think the idea of a nation built on these like sort of libertine, or not, maybe libertine is the wrong word, but yeah, there's some kind of synthesis between like Rousseau, Locke, and Hobbes, right? No, there's a little bit, or yeah, there's something. Anyways, there's something. So, um, yeah, I think that there is a Luciferic tendency to America, and if you want to say it's like a Babylon, that's fine. The Babylon's post-conceptual. That's the whole idea. It's beyond your attribution, but you can make attributions, and then it kind of becomes what you attribute to it. So I think that's also part of metapolitics. It's like how you define the contours of what the truth really is. Okay, yes, man. I'm sorry. I apologize, brother. Please go.
No worries, brother. Thanks a lot. So, since King was talking about this kind of like backstory about the uh, like one of the founding fathers, I was thinking about how if you want to build a religion, and when I mean religion here, I don't mean necessarily something spiritual. Like science can be a religion. You can have like a cult like following for brands. That's a religion, and so on and so forth. Not necessarily spiritual, right? So considering religion from like doing things over and over again religiously. So what you need really is you need a central symbol. That's why the sun is usually the best for this, right? Tiferet. You have it centrally there, harmonizing everything. From that symbol, somebody will start looking into it, and eventually they may want to, not agree entirely and try to escape, let's say. So they may go to like Jesus and they may ask, okay, but maybe I don't agree 100%, and they start looking around. So for that, you need supporting symbols. You need the other Sephiroth. So they would go to like Gevura, for example, and they would see something there and they'll be like, okay, Gevura points back to Tiferet, and you go back and forth now. You start to have kind of like a confirmation bias, right? One symbol supports the other, and so on. Then eventually, from that, you build out habits and like dogmas, rituals, really, that the person needs to do so that they become more incorporated into the religion. And most importantly, they also need a backstory. They need like an origin story. And the best, the better, right? Because then it's like all these crazy, again, this Mormon thing. Oh, the guy, like the angel spoke to him and he fucking got like the new revelation and whatever. Like again, if you don't have that story, then what's the foundation for the thing, right? Or where's it coming from? Now, all of that being said, first think about it. How can then you use that, like Solar was saying, also in your own kind of mythology, of like going around and like going to different places and so on. Like how can you be maybe the own central symbol of your own story in a way, or how can you see that in other things? How can that move? Like how can you connect that to things that are going on right now? Let's say I pick like a brand as an example. Let's say Nike or whatever. Like people will buy things from them more expensively, even though maybe you find like the same trousers in other places, like literally the material and whatever is the same, but they'll buy the symbol. They are buying the religion of the thing. They want to be part of a thing and so on. So not only how can you use that to your advantage, but how can you see that happening and not be consumed by it unconsciously? Because it's one thing to like say, oh, I like that thing and I want to buy it. Yeah, sure. If you're doing it consciously, there's no problem, right? But if you're just being played, then again the other mages are like overpowering you in a way, right? And maybe you want to be smart about it, or so that at least you can learn some tricks and so on. But as you guys were talking about that, it picked me up.
No, you're 100% right, Matt. And I think the solution to the problem that you pose has a very simple thing. I think that it's what is your will? Like, and I also think Dharma is the truth. So, like I also like I'm a Buddhist. Like I really am a Buddhist. It's not like a label, it's not an identity. And why I bring that up is because I think Dharma is a great foundation for America if it took root. But maybe that Dharma isn't Buddhist Dharma. Maybe it's Christian Dharma. Maybe it's sort of bringing back these weird ideas in the proper view. Like a lot of Christians are open to the idea of reincarnation. We don't really believe in reincarnation. We believe in rebirth. But maybe that is part of like that decoherence, that sort of synthesis of paradox or resolution or attempt at resolution of paradox is sort of like to bring those things into complication. Yes, Solar, please go ahead.
I just wanted to add something real quick. Just something that came up as excuse me, Matt was kind of giving this account of, I think you called it like the prime signifier or the prime symbol within a system of signification. This kind of takes me back to maybe the more formal or the more academic sort of either it doesn't actually matter, structural or post-structural sort of philosophy, right? So in any kind of like network of signification, right? One of this is, I don't know if Zizek was the guy, like Zizek through or Lacan through Zizek to posit this, but Zizek's definitely like the most popular or most prominent popularizer of this idea, is that the master signifier within a network, a language of signification, the master signifier is basically like the prime symbol that gives every other element of language or every other sign within that network its meaning. You can understand this really easily in talking about like political ideology, right? So for a race person, whether they're like a black nationalist or a white nationalist or whatever, right? Race and blackness or whiteness or whatever are is sort of the fundamental thing that defines every like element's relation to every other element, right? But what ends up happening in a situation like that is that master signifier becomes empty, right? Because it is used to define all the other terms, but no other terms, even all of them in total, can ever define the master signifier kind of going in the other direction, right? The master signifier itself actually exists kind of outside of the network whose meaning it provides, right, or it's used to generate, right? And so in a sense it becomes kind of a void. And again, it's really easy, just as a practical example, you look at sort of like race essentialist ideologies. Those tend to start coming apart the minute you actually dig into, okay, well, what does it mean to be white, right? If we're going to be like white nationalists, right, is it haplogroups, is it maternal or paternal DNA, is it like a certain like percentage, is it language, like what actually is that, right? And then the whole thing starts to wobble, right? The thing works best actually, and fundamentally, like at a theoretical level, the master signifier has to in some ways be a void signifier within the system. Anyway, so this is all to say that, circling back to what Matt said, of being your own sort of prime symbol or master signifier within the system, this sort of dovetails really beautifully with the Buddhist concept, right? Like if you are going to be that master signifier, you at the same time have to be sort of void. You have to be sort of empty, right, in order to perform this role. Because the second that you start stacking attributes and clinging to this or that sort of property, characteristic, etc., right, the whole system is going to start to get wobbly, right? And you're going to be bound. You're not going to be able to have like true freedom of action and to be able to fully express will through bodhicitta and awareness, right, within that system, unless you kind of like file everything off or about as much as you possibly can. I don't know. Hope that made sense.
That made a lot of sense to me. As the Mormons say, made 100% sense. So, no, that's I know that was like a little lame joke, but shout out to Heidi. Heidi kind of has adopted me. That's what she says, is one of like her grandkids or something. I don't know. Not her grandkids. She's not that old, but I'm in a group chat with all of them. It's very hilarious, and I learn a lot about the trials and tribulations of modern Gen Xers. So both my parents are Gen Xers, for the record. So it is like a level of savagery that I am accustomed to. So. Anyways, okay. Does anyone else have anything else to say? I thought that was great, Solar. I don't really have anything to add. You pretty much explicated it in a depth and precision that I am not able to, especially on that topic. Okay, yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that a few years back, September 23rd, 2017, that's when the great sign in heaven occurred that was in Revelation 12. And so it's described by a verse of the woman clothed in the sun. It's Virgo. So it occurred in September. And at that moment, the moon was at her feet, which we see that imagery a lot with the Mother Mary, for instance, standing on the crescent moon or whatever. So anyway, the rest of it is that she's crowned with a 12 stars. Well, Leo has 9, right? But on that particular day, Venus, Mars, and Mercury were present in Leo, adding up to 12 stars. Again, or is there feedback or something? I couldn't tell if it was just me or not.
It could
But
have
anyway,
been sorry, Joshua. It was a little bit, but it was just because I did have myself muted, I think.
oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't know if it was something I was doing or what. But anyway, that moment I think kind of marked when you talk about the Aeon of the Daughter. That's what always comes to mind for me, is because there really was a sea change, from 2016 onward. And I personally think the MAGA stuff has a lot to do with it too, because it's not localized to just the United States. That's kind of spread everywhere. And from my perspective, that's the Phrygian cap. And so again, I mentioned kind of jokingly that United States' largest export is freedom and liberty, right? Whether it be war or whatever. But in MAGA hats, you got MAGA hats everywhere, right? And so if it's a Jacobian Phrygian cap, those were only worn if you were not a slave. And so if you are a citizen, depending, you might be treated well, but technically you're chained to wherever, everybody's a citizen somewhere, unless you renounce it, I guess. But it kind of makes me think of the Masonic lore that you were mentioning too, because in Masonry, part of your motivation throughout the rhetoric or the catechism is that you endeavor to travel and earn wages in foreign lands and stuff like that. So you're getting the pass. So there is a way to get through the boundary, through the Saturnian boundary, through tokens and passes. And so these are secret, or it's kind of like secret elements, whether they be like bijas or, grips or whatever, that all kind of translates to other cultures too, like mudras and such, in my opinion. But anyway, I just feel like Papaborea would have kind of an element of that probably present too, because um, Atlantis and those types of countries lived a lot of times on the coasts of many different nations. And so they were kind of, like Chris was talking about, I think earlier, the sea people. And so they had the sea was there. They didn't have a land. So they kind of had to borrow it, I guess you could say, when they lived on the land of others. But maybe it's because Atlantis was taken away, so that would be like your birthright. You mentioned Shem at the beginning of the space and the portion, and so they'd be like their portion being taken away. It's like you no longer have a home, and so maybe some of these religions we have today kind of maybe have roots to times like that. But anyway, I didn't want to talk ever long. Monty has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Monty go, but I just want to say one thing. So you're totally right, Joshua. But the one thing about the reference to Shem was that it was the line is that they took of her portion, meaning knowledge, and they built an imperfect ark with it, which mimics exactly what the Gnostic Gospel says. Like I phrased it in a more flowery way, I guess you could say. So I just took the exact same idea. I kept it true to the text. I just framed it in a slightly different way. So it's really about the people who made the religion. So you could say the Magi, the Zoroastrians, the priests, the Manichaeans, the Masons, but it's not them as an institution necessarily, or even as a broad category of being. It's like people who put it into the word, and was it able to stand the test of time. So that's one way to think of it. I'm sorry, Monty, please go. You've had your hand up, really patient. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, guys. Pleasure as always to be here. I've been taking notes during this conversation, and I just had a couple of stray observations. I shared a couple of them in the Gray Lodge, but basically, it's from a lot of what I've been hearing. I've been kind of putting it in the blender, and America was built by Quakers on an Indian burial ground. We live on cursed soil, and it's almost as if it sounds like a curse, but really it's like playing a video game on like the hard level, and it really is a test of like will and might and strength and grit. And I think that crucial aspect of the American character is something that is what thrives here. And it often gets talked about in the context of horror movies. And I was loving what King was saying earlier about movies, that we fear nature in the United States, where in England they fear cities. And I think that that's because of like, the said Indian burial ground, where we're kind of haunted by, these figures of our imagination, but also like the very, very scary, I left my ancestral homeland to explore the great beyond, levels of terrifying monsters that lay behind the surface. And a lot of that Christian expats that came over here, they wield Christ or magic, to a more broad way to describe it, to grant vision and protection. The hearth and home, that's where the American Christ was born. It really bothers me when a lot of Americans are Catholics, because uh, that's not who we are. The Protestant, we reject the authority. We reject the Pope who taxed us, and we came to the United States to go and settle and carve our own path. 1776, and basically, it's we create like modern myths. And what King was saying earlier before about movies and such, I just think that we haven't. Tom Cruise is the modern Moses. Moses was a 70-year-old man who lived on his laurels and could have retired and died a happy, easy death. But God spoke through him that a life lived without adventure is not a life lived. And that's why he goes and Tom Cruise being the actual Moses is a very broad stretch, but go with me. That's why he does his own stunts. That's why he goes and he just continues to dare and continues to improve. And some could say that Scientology is is a branch off from like Protestant Christendom, and I don't even necessarily disagree with that. I think it's kind of cool, but regardless, um, the that like spirit is so distinctly both like American and exploratory. And uh, now that we're in the Trump 2.0 presidency, we can really feel the wheels kind of fall off the "Make America Great Again" wagon. A lot of people go and talk about that Republicans wish to go back to a path that didn't exist. And they're kind of right, because what we're imagining, the future that we are paving for ourselves, is not a necessary return to Norman Rockwell style 50s, but literally breaking the chains of slavery. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what we want. We want to be free of bankers and wicked magic and like floods of like the aliens. And England may have abolished slavery first, but America really like defined what being a slave and like emancipating from that really looks like. And so when Jim was talking earlier about Hyperborea, that is your thing. You deserve flowers for that. I shared a post about Hyperborea being it's spreading, and I kind of think that the 1776 concept of Hyperborea is excuse me, the 1776 style of the United States is kind of what Hyperborea leans and tends and wants to be. I think that that's a great molding, and I do think that whether it be in cyberspace, the mystical space, the metaphysical space, who cares? All of us are together in this room right now, and we are exchanging ideas in this very like Asian Aryan fusion. And I just want to say that it's so beautiful, and I just think that it's really the long live the Grey Lodge, 1,000 years. Thanks, guys.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Montgomery Carlo, one of my favorite co-hosts of Threshold Saints, and just an all-around great dude. He has 2 episodes with me and lots to come. And so I know all of you are waiting on me. I'm sorry I had a little bit of a busy week, but I promise I'll be getting to it. As you know, I'll be in Asia in 10 days, I think. And so we'll be taking a little short break. But you guys can obviously, Solar or Matt or Joshua can host the space that night, and or Monty even, or anyone, really, anyone who wants to from the lodge. As long as you're a lodge member, you can host the space. So yeah, we'll do that. That was so great, Monty. Legit, I had so many thoughts when you were speaking, and then when I started speaking, they totally left me. Um, I think it's really cool. I think it's cool that I've had a few words that have kind of penetrated like the weirdness, like like Joe. Obviously, shout out to Joe Nally, Pill Eater, Safe Sleazy. Like like that. And I've said it so many times, like that. The Hapaboria idea would never have come if not from my interaction with Joe, and not even necessarily the episode he did on the show, but maybe even before. So there's a little lore for you guys. Um, so no, I 100% agree. I think there is something interesting about Scientology. Like, I don't agree with Scientology. I'm not a Scientologist. I don't want to be a Scientologist. But in the meta story of what American religion is, yeah, there's something interesting. Protestantism, or not Protestantism, Scientology absolutely comes from magic. It comes from American magic. It comes from American ideas of magic, and of course, that's infused with Marxism. It's infused with Protestantism, and even though I will say, like, okay, as a French person or whatever I am, Hapaborean, I'm obviously more sympathetic to Catholicism than perhaps a lot of Americans, and so I totally acknowledge that that may be just a way I conceive of the world. But I tend to think of the systems just as generally related through Kabbalah or through magic. Not necessarily the same, but you can kind of understand the systems through the tree. So I'm kind of okay with all of them simply if as long as I can kind of like have I can pinpoint where they're going on the tree. If I can do that, I generally can be okay with something as long as it's something I can agree with or logically makes sense to me in my framework. So I agree with Monty that definitely the worship of like the sort of like the state outside the state, that's definitely not American. No, there's nothing American about that at all. So I agree, but I also think that, well, I don't know if I should say, but Leo Zagami made a really interesting prediction that Rome would fall. And he said they won't even appoint. I know people are talking about it, like all the tradcasts and all that, but he's actually saying that they won't even appoint a new pope; that they'll actually just appoint a bishop of Rome, and they'll say that there was an issue in papal succession, that they misunderstood something from like the medieval time. I'm not saying that's true. Just it's just an interesting idea, and so I do think like. I mean, Trump even said it. Like, whether you like him or hate him, he did say like the next pope should really the Pope of America. I think that's what the reporter asked. He said it should be the cardinal or the Bishop of New York, and like that actually kind of does make sense if you understand Catholicism. It should be more localized, decentralized, and have the specificity of its home nation to define what the church is in a broader way. But yeah, look, I think America has all the potential, and I'm so glad you said that, Monty, about like not returning. It's not about returning. There's nothing about this. This is about return. Sorry, Solar. It is about return in a way because we're gonna actually look at what was good. We're gonna actually look at what was good, what worked, what is useful, what is generative, what is like fulfilling, nourishing, spiritually, materially, and intellectually, and we're going to use those things, and we're going to leave the bullshit behind. But there is no return. There isn't a return, and exactly like what you said, like there isn't a return to Norman Rockwell. That never existed. Like everything we know about that is, I often say, is kayfabe. Yeah, that's 100% kayfabe. That never existed. Like what people think of that, that's not. So I'm a millennial. I know Monty's a millennial. I know Solar's a millennial. I know Joshua's a millennial. Matt's a Zoomer. But the reality is like we don't even really know what we don't even have a living cultural memory. Most of our parents don't even have really a clearly defined memory of what the 50s were even like. So I'm like, why bother even trying to recreate something? You can never recreate time. Time exists in your mind, strictly conceptual, if you understand it. So let's just move forward in space with what we have. We have certain ideas. Text carries ideas forward through space, right? Because it contains the word in its full, in at least its vessel. So we can take of those and move forward into the future, and that's all it has to be. And I'm not saying discard everything. I'm not saying burn it all. I'm not like that's not my thing. I'm just like, let's just look at what we have and make of what we have now. Because I think it's like too late to go back. And I also don't even think that anyone's consciousness can really go back. If you think of 2020 as like walking through the gateway, it doesn't mean that everyone met the same conclusion or that everyone's worldview is the same. But I think we all can tell that people are a little fucking off. There's like, people are weirder, people are more aggressive, people are more metaphysical. There's, there's like it's high weirdness is very high. So can your consciousness ever really return? Yeah, maybe to like some primordial like Buddha state, but it's not. Yeah, Solar, please go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, Joshua. But I'll let Solar go because I think he has a shorter question. Well, whoever wants to go.
Go ahead, Solar. I don't mind.
Oh, okay, sure. I'll just go with the really short one. That just because you can't return to, let's say, the heroic age, just thinking of Hesiod's 4 ages, doesn't mean that you can't LARP as Hercules, because that's how you march from Macedonia to India. And then you can do it again. You can LARP as Alexander. And then you can do it again. You can LARP as Caesar, right? Like each of these are actually like forward looking, forward thinking, like reconfigurations of like a past mythos, right? But at no point are you ever actually returning. And I mean, if you don't understand that by this point, either in life or the spaces, like I don't really know what you're doing.
Okay, so that was a perfect articulation of what I was trying to say. So thank you, Solar. Yes. Use the stories. They're perfectly good. Christianity's perfectly good. I've said it so many times. You guys are probably like, Jin's secretly Christian because he loves Christian Kabbalah. I do like Christian Kabbalah. There's a high degree of logic in it for me. But I'm a more logic oriented person. So as long as it makes sense for me, I can be like, okay, I think it's a worthy goal. But that, like what Solar said, that can apply, like the 4 ages. That's obviously like Aeon of the Daughter, but maybe he didn't call it that. But it's like the idea of the wheel turning. The wheel always is turning. It doesn't matter. New Yuga, new Aeon, new Kalpa. Doesn't matter. It's always going. So that's kind of my thing. And I think Habit Warrior is really about the builders. And the builders are the people who are in this space right now. And it's also like not just people who will listen to this after, but it's also going to be people who are interested in metaphysics. And I hear so many people just openly saying, like, I'm into magic. I'm into exploring these ideas. I'm into, and I'm not even talking about entheogens or anything like that. Just in general, people are ready. People are open. People want to have, yes, Twitter is not like that, okay? I admit Twitter is about silos, it's about klipas, but break the fucking klipas, right? Like that's what I always say. So like, have expansive conversations. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about people think you're weird. It is kind of weird. That's okay. We're saying Americans are weird. We're saying America is kind of weird. We're saying the American religion is kind of weird. Just go with it. It's weird. It's okay. That's also what makes America kind of cool, right? Like if you look as a trajectory from like its more post 1970s, like that very realist cinema sort of aesthetic, and then it kind of became more about like, we're gonna do things, we're gonna add a little camp, but we're gonna have like hoorah America. It's like all the things together. That is really what America is, and that's why also 80s and 90s cinema is the true kino. But that is a discussion for another day. Yes, please, Joshua, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, I would concur. I think, like you were saying, people are kind of hungry for a real spiritual experience, so to speak. Maybe that's why they are kind of sometimes drawn to things like Scientology, because they're just trying to find something genuine, right? But one of the things I wanted to add was the dark MAGA thing that has kind of come about. Made me think of how there's the red cap, which is rubedo, and we mentioned the four kingdoms or corners a moment ago, but I was thinking of the four stages of alchemy. So you got the red, which is rubedo. Well, now we got black caps, which is nigredo. Um, and you do hear talk about the white hats, and there are white MAGA hats. Technically, you could buy one. I've seen Trump wear them. Uh, but there's no orange one or yellow one, which is the citrine element. Yet they do call him Orange Man. Bad. So, so I just thought MAGA is kind of funny to me because there's also four letters in it as well, and it's just kind of made me laugh to think about how similar it is. So, is there some type of alchemy going on?
Yes.
Yeah.
May I interject, Branch?
Yeah, sure, man. And I saw
Yeah.
Solar had his hand up as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So something that I brought up last time was the film Paris, Texas, and if anyone wanted a very highly spiritual, metaphysical Americana film suggestion, I would suggest watching Wim Wenders' film Paris, Texas. As I mentioned last time, that is where we get in current day this idea of the red MAGA hat, right? This is it's what Beyonce invokes. It's Kurt Cobain's favorite film. It's a very spiritual, Western shamanistic film in this sense, that like the red hat shaman kind of invocation, and that they keep on referencing. Lana Del Rey referenced it, um, and the whole idea of Paris, Texas, is that it's a spiritual. It's not a real. It is a real town in Texas in real life, but as far as the movie, it's a spiritual place that the main character Travis is trying to ascend to in a way. Um, so it's not real. So when we're talking about these, um, you know, places that we that maybe never really existed, this um, hearth, I guess, is one of the words you could refer to it as. These hearth places longing to go back to a place that never existed. That's why, you know, I will fully admit that growing up, I am consumed so much 1950s themed material from movies and TV shows. The whole Leave It to Beaver, you know, kind of motif, and I'm so drawn to that. Um, and I know that's not how the 1950s were, but to me that doesn't matter. It's something. It's that hearth place for America that I would like to strive towards. In a sense, I know it wasn't. Again, I'm not saying it was all sunshine and rainbows, um, but it's something that is appealing, and I think that's why um, it gets woven and weaved into these great American epics in a way. A lot of times it's like you have this idea of the perfect American dream, and it's usually like this painted over 1950s aesthetic. Anyways, what I wanted to bring up about we're talking about will a lot, and will is one of the three, um, weavers. It's fate, destiny, and will, and something that's I've talked about a lot recently. Symbolic Studies also referenced this in his appearance in Channel KOK's latest episode. Rudolf Steiner talked about this, and it's this idea of a spider being kind of the egregore of the modern uh, American Western world. So, all that being said, to tie this back into um, the Red Hats and MAGA magicians, part of Trump becoming president is all memetics. Again, there's a documentary called "I Can't Kill Meme," all about the Chaos Wizards, and weaving is a part of um, chaos magic in a way, um, and so we have this memetic part of all this, and so all that being said, when we're talking about will and creating our own realities, royalty and reality comes from the same linguistic root. So when you're saying your kingdom, you're saying that your reality. One of the greatest American epics for a lot of people my age would they'll probably point to The Lion King by Disney, which is just a retelling of Hamlet, which is just a retelling of the Viking myth of Amleth, I believe is a butchering of the character's name. So it's a story that we keep on retelling wherever we go. And the latest iteration, of course, is Lion King, and in that film, there's a scene where uh, Mufasa is telling Simba they're looking out over Pride Rock to where their kingdom is, and he says, anything that the light touches is our kingdom. Everything that the shadows fell upon, the darkness falls upon, is out of our kingdom. And that's, I think, what's so powerful about the magic word of no is like knowing what to say no to let into your kingdom or within your reality, and what to not let into your kingdom and your reality. Um, it's said that every great empire, every great king, era, um, or eon, whatever you want to break it up into, was marked by um, this falling, and usually that falling, the ending of that age or royal leader was marked by the art of his kingdom being altered, usually from an outside source, um, where um, I believe in China they was they had a time where couldn't they could only perform certain notes at certain uh, dates and times and places, and it's very rigorous and strict, because you know uh, this idea of you won't be able to control your the citizens of your kingdom if they're getting outside uh, influences that's altering their what they think and their beliefs and everything. They're falling out of your control. Um, so um, and that's how we get to this idea of like modern art being ugly. That's essentially the marker to ending point of an age. Is this when the art gets kind of destroyed, the beauty is kind of taken out, and the minds are being kind of overtaken by something else, and that's not necessarily even a death, but a shifting in the zeitgeist to a new age, a new royal king, a new kingdom, and with all that being said, I think that's what we're really talking about is this kind of paradigm shift. Everyone's talking about the vibe shift since Trump got into presidency and everything. I think that kind of plays into all of this.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Solar, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll make a quick comment on the modern art. I want to get back to MAGA hats real quick. All my comments are short. So one interesting way I think, or one perhaps useful way of conceptualizing modern art, now that we're sort of like we're definitely through the century of modern art at this point, right? But modern art is by and large inherently conceptual, right? Maybe not 100%, but the sort of like great turning in art in the early 20th century and really at the very end of the 19th century, if we want to get specific, is this turn from in the noetic experience of beauty, right, and representational art, right, away from, we don't care if it either represents it or it tries to represent something in the sort of objective shared consensus reality, but most importantly, we don't care if it's beautiful, it needs to be interesting, right? And what is interesting is comprehended with the sort of rational conceptual dualistic mind, right, instead of noetically non-dually, right, by participating in beauty, right? So that's just maybe like one way to mark the decline in terms that we're sort of like already familiar with from the vocabulary we use in the space. But I wanted to talk about the MAGA thing just real quick. So the two comments, I know because we're sort of shit posting here with like MAGA hat alchemy colors, but I think like the clear like referent is the Phrygian cap, right, as the cap of liberty. But again, to speak sort of in terms of a decline, I think like I don't know if this is actually true that the original like Phrygian cap was supposed to be a Scythian cap. I don't know if that's actually like myth, if that's like an antiquarian myth, or if that's actually like grounded in historical reality. Sorry, I'm not up on the state of that field. But if let's say it is, by the time we get to the red cap in Rome, right, it's associated with freed slaves or the freeing of slaves, right? And from then on, it kind of takes on that like this quest for liberty and freedom and things like that, right, within the Jacobin context and later. But what's important to note here is that it goes from being the hat of the Scythians, right, who are a people who are free in and of themselves. They free themselves by their action and their capacity, and it devolves to being the hat of a slave that needs to be freed by the will and benevolence of another, right? So it's a derivative dependent subsidiary freedom, right, as opposed to a true sort of spiritual inherent freedom, right? And okay, final point on the MAGA hat stuff is I would just like point back to Evola as he's bringing all the sources together in his alchemy book, where he says very, very clearly he warns against the appearance of the red before the working of the white is complete. And what he means is bypassing the work of Negredo and Albedo, right, to go right into the red work. And he said, what's going to happen if the sort of spirit is not totally liberated and totally purified by the philosopher's Mercury, by this initiatic death, freeing, liberating of the spirit, and then that emerges and then is brought back within the ashes of Saturn, right, within the vessel of the body and revivified. What ends up happening is if you bypass that, you don't thoroughly heat it, reheat it, go through the thing, right? You'll end up elevating to godhood, right, or to a divine state, an impure spirit that includes your attachments, your predilections, things that you do not want divinized, right? And other sources, like not alchemical sources, speak of this as well, just in different terms, right? But it's a very, very common theme. I mentioned this. I don't remember if it was in one of these spaces or on the podcast with Jin, right? But it's sort of a, be careful what you want to divinize, right? Because you can do a lot of damage by amplifying and sort of solidifying, making absolute character traits that may not be the best, right, for you long term, right? You do not want to like bake that into the new cake that you're baking, right? So just like beware the red before the white work is complete.
Wow, that was really profound, Solar, and And well said. Also, I totally agree with you. Interestingly enough, since you are doing Zogchen from the land of Zog, the Phrygian hat is the same as the Nyingma red cap shamans. It's the Nagapa. It's the village mantra. It's the he who recites the words in freedom. He's free to recite the words, both forwards and backwards, right? That's what the village mantra is. But good village Montran tries not to recite them backwards because he realizes that he has passed a lamp before his feet, so he understands that there is a karmic implication, and that is actually the name of a very important text for village Montrans, village sorcerers. It is called the lamp before the path, and so I just want to point that out. Is that like yes, the Phrygian cap is like is it's a tantrika. So I think that's interesting, and I think also, I mean, it's impossible to go away from what Maga was. Maga was a idea coined in the Temple of Set or adjacent sort of ways of thinking with Aquino sort of like overseeing it, right? Okay, so it's a magical idea. He didn't even come up with it. It's obviously drawing on other sources. We won't get into that. Obviously, you both, Joshua, Chris, and Solar, discussed some of that, and I added a little Central Asian element. So it's a magical work. So that's what we did with the manga thing. We memed the future that we want. If you want to call it that, that's not, it's an imperfect hermeneutic to describe it, but yeah, sort of, we were the cause of something, you could say, at least an ideological shift. And in a chaos magic idea, if you shift the consciousness, you kind of prepare the foundation for the reality to come or for your thing to manifest. So that's what we did, and then now it's very decoherent, right? We're trying to figure it out. We're in the year of the snake. It's a year of fire, very Geberotic. There's a lot of smoke. It's decoherent. What do we make of it? So I think broadly, this is what the whole series is about this, but then I also think that this specific one was almost perfect in how it really came together. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
Just wanted to add two quick things. One to what Solar said about this careful what you want to divinize. So I'm going to give a materialistic example. Say that you have all these bad habits and these tendencies to like vices and whatever, right? But nowadays you cannot be consumed by them because you don't have the resources. Let's say you don't have enough money to buy all the stuff that all the crazy stuff that you want to buy, or you don't have time because you're occupied with something else, and so on and so on. But a lot of people are like willing to get crazy amounts of money or crazy amounts of freedom, but they still are being controlled by their vices, right? So if they get in a divine position, as in they get like huge chunks of money out of nowhere, that could be actually the biggest curse they would have, because they would divinize, let's say, themselves while still having the vices and the bad habits and so on and so forth, which they now wouldn't be able to control and would be like in a moment consumed, right? So that's I think a easy way to try to understand it in like real life, how that could happen, right? Why you would first control yourself, and in the process of doing so also things just get better anyway. It's like a lot of people have this crazy idea that they need a big number but on their bank accounts, but really you don't need it. You may want it but you don't need it. It's a huge difference there. Like, you can do stuff that you love, and that can funnel into bigger things as you go, but it's not like you need it. It can come to you. And another quick one before I go. Jin was talking about how you mean things into existence, and we talked about this in one of the spaces a couple weeks ago. Actually, I think more than a month now, about the importance of names, right? The idea that a name will can be either a blessing or a curse, and that's one way, obviously. Another way is like symbols. So the symbols that you use and the symbols that you interact with, you're gonna meme things into existence. Like if you think about a meme, it's like you have genes, which are the genetical one, the material one, and you have memes, which are the mental, the virtual ones. So you have all these symbols running around, and it's why you should curate your mind out of them, and why you should interact and interface with ideas. Like Jin said, if Christian ideas are the ones which speak to you the most, go for it. Whatever the fuck, doesn't matter. Like Scientology, whatever. Really, if you're in control, as in like consciously, you know what you're doing, or you're at least trying to do it, then it doesn't really matter. It's just symbols, but curate them. You know, don't get caught up, especially in like, I know we are on X, so it's very easy here to fall for like rage bait and stuff like that, because you're just, it's like a meme machine. So all day stuff is happening, and if you keep feeding it, you keep creating that into your existence. I'll give like another example. Ram shared with me on Instagram, I think, this guy talking about like how he would make a voodoo doll basically using Captain America as a way to attack America itself, the nation. And to me, that was it was so funny, because in a way, it's like, imagine that picture, that the person is meaning that they have a problem with the nation that they are living on, and now they have to create, like they have to basically attack it in a way so that they control this thing. But think about it: if you can do such a thing, let's say a voodoo doll, why don't meme your way into blessing yourself out of a bad situation instead of trying to fight something? Because that's the thing, the more you fight something, the more you actually need it. Like the more the hero fights the villain, the more the villain needs to exist for the drama to exist. Otherwise, you're not a hero, right? There's no dragon, you're not a hero. So think about it that way when you're trying to, you know, meme things into existence, or at least be aware that you are doing it, even if you're not conscious. So if you just keep doom scrolling all day, you're gonna create everything, right? And if you're not choosing, somebody else is choosing for you.
So I don't know if you guys were all talking in a back room without me, because there were certain moments of the space that felt very Kabbalistic, like you were synthesizing things that other people were bringing up. But I do want to say something that about solar, and yes, I am will use go solar. I know you've been waiting, really patient. Thank you, brother. But the sort of Matt kind of, I don't know. I think Matt kind of gets me, so I think he kind of got it. But so I was thinking in my mind, and I even wrote down the aggregates of the body politic. So I was talking about that. And Solar was talking about like the physical corpus, right? Like how there's like a, you enter out of formlessness, out of the vessel, post Saturn, right? So, but you can think of the nation in the same way, because they're both very similar things, right? There's a corpus of the nation. The texts bring it into coherence. The idea, the projection that you perceive, that what you perceive of the nation kind of fills it. So there is something, even what Matt said about like the Captain America. So for me, if with my like chaos magic kind of way of, I like that system. So I would not use Captain America, but maybe that's because I'm a little bit too logical for chaos magic in some ways. But I would not use Captain America, because I would argue that Captain America is an egregore, in fact, to take those kind of negative energies, you could say, directed at America. I think that that's what he is, with his adamantine shield. And hello, Shakti, our Japanese Dakini queen. So, Avi, you have a little competition. That's okay. We love all of them to come. So, welcome. Uh, but, no, I think that, so I would not choose Captain America. I would have chosen something, I would have definitely gone after one of the figureheads, maybe. Maybe something more modern. Obviously, we know. Okay, so the Bushes, everybody fucking hates them. I hate them. I think all of us hate them. Just basically, they were just like nobody had a good opinion of them. Okay, just like nobody liked them, nobody wanted them. Very few people were really into it. So I'm just saying that even them, they're kind of a figurehead too. They're kind of an egregore to take discontent, to take love, to take whatever, take the will of the mass consciousness. So they can be a vessel for the aggregates of the body politic. So I just wanted to put forward that idea. I'm riffing off you, Solar. Okay, Solar, and then Monty. Please go ahead.
No, what I had was tangential 5 minutes ago. It's all good.
I apologize, Solar. Monty, please go ahead.
Oh, excuse me, couldn't tell. Yeah, it's thinking of the putting a curse on the Star-Spangled Man to blight America's face is I don't know. It just what I was saying earlier about how the U.S. is built on an Indian burial ground. Like this is rough terrain. This is like the strong survive terrain. Like there is like part of this new frontiers that like needs to be tamed. Nature and like the physical land bites back all the time. It's the most fertile soil, but like you have to work for it. And I think that a lot of the especially the 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 year like recent year immigrants are completely misplacing their hatred of the whatever corruption or whatever misdeeds that they can are convinced that the United States has done to them, even though they've never set foot in their home soil, is completely misplaced on the fact of the land physically rejecting them. I think that it's too frivolously and too flippantly do we disrespect the physical boundaries of spaces. Borders are built along not just arbitrary lines like congressional districts, but based on the physical boundaries of soil and space. And I think that you shouldn't be able to go like the frivolous way that people travel now. You can hop on a plane and fly to like Australia, and you can take a flight the next day back, and it'll be like 48 hours, like all said and done. That's like that defiance of like nature and God is something that like actually does like you get repelled by it. And I don't know. I just think the idea of cursing Captain America because you did something insane and wild, and like I I don't even really have a full thought out piece with this. I just found that like really interesting.
So what you said, Monty, about boundaries and borders, particularly about borders, was extremely profound. So I just want to acknowledge that, and it was, in my opinion, 100% correct. So, um, I thought this was interesting when you even brought it up the first time about sort of like I was thinking like the ghost dance religion. I wish Dapper Zan had stayed in the room because he loves when I do like American synchro indigenous mysticism. But I think that's his primary like area of interest for me, or what he's interested in what I have to say, at least as far as that goes. But you know, that's when you look at the kind of like the indigenous religious landscape. I'm talking like the real stuff, not like the woke stuff, and not like the neo-reactionary whatever LARP stuff either. Like there is a middle pillar balance approach to like history, right? Like you don't have to go like far either extreme to like kind of figure out what is closest to the truth. Maybe not 100%, and maybe we'll never know. Okay, that's fine. But when you're looking at the indigenous religions, right at the turn of the Republican period, we'll call it, they were all syncretic. They were totally open to taking like Christian ideas, totally open to taking, like you have Dutch powwow magic. Dutch powwow magic is Kabbalah, is Dutch like Kabbalah. It's both Martinist and Jewish at the same time, and but then it did take on like little elements of like folk magic from here and folk magic from the natives, and it really did. Like there are certain particular practices that they definitely borrowed in, but you could also say maybe they just recognized the universal seed in the method, and that's sort of how I think of it. And I think that, like, to go with Monty's point of like the Indian burial ground, that's perfect because we live on the carnal ground. I mean, but we also live on the most fertile soil. We also live on the garden. And that's exactly what America is. And by America, I do mean also including 51st state. But, it's also the thing about mounds. I know this is like people get very conspiratard about this, and shout out to JJ for teaching me all I know about mounds. But um, no, there's an energy here. There are ley lines, and that's why your point about borders was so profound, because it's true. There's an energetic quality to the land here that probably is unique, in my opinion. At least I think so. So, but I think it's tameable. I just don't know if it's been really tamed. I think we kind of have lost that sort of plot point sometime in like the post-war period. I think that it was intended to be kind of tamed over time, or but we know that the method was lost. We know that like whatever happened with our grandparents and our great grandparents, they kind of forgot shit. So I don't know like what happened with that, but it's up to us to put it back together. It's up to us to rectify, and I think that it's totally possible to kind of like move forward with like a taming of like like the corpse of Babylon, or the turtle. I love the turtle metaphor, like the turtle island. Yeah, it is kind of. I forgot. I had a really good phrase about it last week. I called it like. I can't even remember, but yeah, it is kind of like libtard decolonization theory. But there's something really interesting about it. It's so interesting that it's like a universal myth. It's the Brahma Loka. It's the turtle's back, and where is the turtle's back, and where on the Mercator map does it look like a turtle? It's America. I mean, that's that's what it is. So I think it's an amazing and beautiful story, regardless if it's actually true or not. I think that's maybe a perfect foundation stone for the American religion, is the turtle's back, and what is here we can make of it. And that being said, Joshua, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I like the imagery of the turtle. It reminds me of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Solar mentioned something about the ashes of Saturn earlier, and it had occurred to me earlier in the evening that Saturn contains the word urn, and so you put ashes in an urn. So I just thought that was really wild, which an urn is a vessel. So Aquarius and Saturn kind of share that vessel thing in terms of a vessel for life and a vessel for death. It's just kind of interesting. Never thought about it. But anyway, another thing that came to mind was Mithraism. So Mithraism is very similar to modern day Freemasonry, and they too feature the Phrygian cap in their rituals. In fact, one moment here, I have the page up. So the first degree was Corvix, or Corvex, like raven or crow, and so it was black. So again, reminding me of Nigretto. And then second was Nymphus, or bridegroom, which is the first was associated with Mercury, second was Venus, third Mars, and this was called Miles, which is soldier. And then the fourth degree, Leo, was associated with Jupiter, and it oftentimes you see a lion holding a Vajra, of all things, in the center of his chest. And then fifth degree is the Persian degree, associated with the Phrygian cap, and this one's associated with Luna. So maybe even the white, because it's also associated with the stars. So the white light of the moon or stars maybe come to mind for me. Sixth degree is Heliodromus, the sun runner, reminiscent, I think, of the chariot that draws the sun across the sky, right? So that's soul. So gold, I suppose. And then seventh degree is Pater, which is father. And so this is represented by a shepherd's staff, um, mitre, like a pope's hat. So when we see that symbol of authority, there's also a ring, so like a signet ring or some type of uh, sigil or signet of authority. So papal bulls, for instance, we mentioned like how Moses was little g God because he's the bull of heaven. He's the voice of God, but he's not God. He's the vehicle for the voice. In that sense, he's a Metatron, right? So I think that's what this degree kind of represents, and it's related to Saturn. So I just thought it was interesting how the MAGA hats and the alchemy topic kind of wove into Mithraism, because Mithraism and Freemasonry are so strikingly similar. And I think that that whole anti-slavery thing and free, because you have to being free and bond, those are also terms in Freemasonry. So there is this element of being free from boundaries, free from Saturn's restriction. You can travel, and so you have tokens like a hat, handshakes or gestures, bijous, whatever. I never can pronounce that word properly. And so that become your token, right? But anyway, I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Also, bijou is obviously French for diamond, so I don't know if you did that on purpose, but that was interesting. Obviously, the seeds can be diamond. Yes, Solar. Sorry, go ahead. I see you.
No, sorry. Sometimes the raised hand disappears, and I'm not sure if it's visible on your end, so I just like reset it. That's not me spamming. I apologize.
No, no,
You know
no,
what I
no.
mean?
I
Like I
felt
just want to make
bad.
sure that it was still there.
No, I
Yeah.
felt bad for the last time. I
No,
apologize.
no, it's all good. So this is kind of on Monty's point, but it's been kind of taken up by others as well. This idea of the sort of like war against nature. It reminded me of how, at least in the ancient Egyptian context, and you see this other places as well, the Neteru, right, the gods or even lesser spirits, are it's this interesting set of ideas. So you'll have like mountains, then you'll have the god of mountains, and then you'll have all of the maybe concepts, qualities that are associated with mountains, like it's indestructible and indomitable, right? I'm just picking a really easy example, right? And all three of those aspects kind of get blended together, right? The physical thing is also a personal, or at least semi-personal god, and is also kind of the bearer or instantiator of those concepts in the world, right? And so that's I think that's a kind of a useful framework for understanding what we're talking about when we're talking about like the land has to be conquered. And I think that I don't know, sometime in the 20th century, let's say, or maybe the late 19th century, our ancestors collectively sort of lost their sort of mythopoetic justification, or their raison d'etre, right, of what the American project was all about. And nonetheless, though, they were still living in an age of increasing sort of like technical proficiency, right? So I think because of the sort of twin proliferations of finance capital and the financialization of life and of society, and tremendous sort of technical ability, right? Post-industrial, all of that, right? It kind of allowed us to have a slackening of mission, like a sort of softening of how we understood. We sort of lost our purpose as a people, while at the same time still keeping these sort of natural boundaries and ideas under domination. And so what does that mean? Well, in the absence of a guiding force, a guiding will, I think we see essentially the emergence of techno capital as the force in and of itself, right? Like in the vacuum that we have left by sort of neglecting our divine mission, our divinizing mission, right? To become gods ourselves, right? And to forge a heavenly kingdom that our ancestors sort of understood themselves as participating in. We left the door open, right? Like and something is in the process of birthing itself to fully take our place and to exert its will over these unfolding processes, right? Like I think that's a helpful way to sort of connect acceleration is kind of like some Landian ideas, but I think it's specifically because we as a people cease to participate in the mythopoetic sort of unfolding of our own destiny. And we basically handed it off to these sort of twin ghosts in the machine of technological domination, as I sit in the middle of the upper Midwest, right? Which is in the country, but from horizon to horizon, the land is completely dominated, instrumentalized, right, to agricultural industry, right? It's monocropped, GMO, you know, as far as the eye can see, right? Every square mile of this state is completely bent, right, to sort of productive will, right? But at a certain point, it ceases to become American or even human will, right? It's for its own sake, it's for the sake of capital, for the sake of increasing like techne, right? And so I see like our struggle as one to sort of reassert ourselves and to take back the reins of driving this process in a more human direction and perhaps even in a transhuman or post-human direction, but that is focused on us as opposed to focused on the maximization of the logic of capital and techne.
Yeah, that was great. That was great, Professor. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so one thing I wanted to say is yes, I am about taming the land. But when I'm saying that, I'm saying that from my sort of like Buddhist ontological perspective, where it's much more libtard geo ontological relationality, right? Like we're sort of in co-creative relations with the land that we're on. So I think actually what you're saying, Solar, it kind of is aligned with that in a way. I don't know if you agree, but I think it is more aligned with that. But it's a little more gentle. I'm not saying, go out there and drive railroad ties into every magic mound that you see. No, I'm saying it more tame your own mind, and by taming your own mind, when you go out and do other things in the material world, you're more single pointed to sort of like, apply pressure where you need to apply pressure. And because you're sort of unified, right? Like your physicality and your worldly action and your mind are both more unified, so you're more able to push through densities, right? You're able to to be the adamantine. Like I know Solar brought this up. I know Monty brought this up. Like that is the Kila. That is the Vajra Kilaya. It's like the sun who is the single pointed. He brings all things into synthesis, and he brings all the hosts. In fact, that's even how it's described. He brings all the hosts into synthesis, into himself, and he brings them into single pointed focus. So you could even think of this as like Christ. It can be exactly the same. Okay, it's like it's when he's on the hill. It's when the three keys are on the hill. It's the exact same idea as Aquila. Very similar. And so those are kind of the wheels, or the keys, excuse me, the keys that turn the locks, or the wheels. So because both of those ideas are true. So but so what I'm saying is that there's a kind of profound way to understand that, like have to you have to be in line with your own will too. And I obviously Solar said that, but I think that is probably not, it's overemphasized and underemphasized, because it's a justification that people use to go sicko. And as I say, please don't go sicko on my behalf or anyone's behalf. But also no, seriously, like I'm like anti-sicko. I'm like, just I'm taking it conceptually, like just cool shit, magic, great, who cares who wrote it, like, but don't be sicko with it. Yeah, so just want to say that. Okay, Joshua, please go ahead.
Thanks, man. I had a few questions, one for Monty, and then also one for Matt. And notice Kane is back, so I had one for him. So I'll just kind of spit them out real quick, if you guys want to answer, maybe. So I was just going to mention to Monty about the Mothman story in my area. There's a curse associated with that. The local legend is that Chief Cornstalk cursed the land before he died, because soldiers had came in and in a dishonorable manner just killed him and his family, or I think, and it's basically an assassination, is what it was. And so it wasn't honorable. And we even heard earlier about King talking about like how much respect some of the natives had, so they were living like by divine law, right? So like from divine law perspective, assassinations rule back karma, right? So anyway, that he levied a curse on the land, and so the Mothman disaster, or the disaster with the Silver Bridge falling, and Mothman was being sighted around at the time and stuff. So I just wanted to ask you if you'd ever heard anything about that, or if you had cryptids, in your areas that had legends like that. But since Matt wasn't here last time, I just wanted to ask him about the or Solar for that matter, their perspective on the feathered serpent's origin of America, that sort of thing. And we had discussed the serpent mounds last week. And then the last thing I'll mention to King was we were talking about a voodoo doll, Captain America voodoo doll or whatever. And so I was just wondering when that happened, because I think the latest Captain America movie was kind of a disaster. So it would be kind of ironic if, in a Discordian kind of way, like the curse just hit the movie or something. I don't know. I'm finished. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up the Mothman. He loves the Chicago airport. Um, yeah, it's he's the doomsayer. He always shows up like moments before disaster. If anyone here is a Pokemon fan, Absol, the Doomsayer, who's like really hard to catch after the flying gym. Um, a similar thing. I love cryptids. I think they're fascinating. I think that, I mean, so I'm sure everyone here is familiar with Dandadan, like the hot new anime at the moment. And it's all about cryptids. And I kind of do think that there is this like American mythos and this well, no, it's worldly because like people experience it all the time. The Japanese have yokai. There are these things that one of my favorites is the umibozu, the Japanese yokai. It's a giant that emerges into out from the sea, creating like to like weary sailors. And uh, the only thing it'll like, crash into you, like it's just like there to kill you, unless you give him a bottomless pail to pour water into. You give him an endless task, and that's how you escape. Um, I live in New Jersey, so the Jersey Devil, the trees down in the Pine Barrens are so close to the Jersey Shore that salt, like it has like completely penetrated the soil, and so all of the trees look like they're dying, as if they've been scorched. Which is a thing that people don't really talk about too much about the Pine Barrens. The Jersey Devil like dances and prances around in the Pine Barrens. And uh, but last thing, and then I'll pass the mic. I live next to this. It's referred to as Stonehenge. It's this apartment building that looks like the Capitol Records building. That has the highest amount of alien like UFO sightings on the East Coast. So I don't know. I'm keyed into the high strangeness. I think that life's too boring to not think that you got to stay on your toes. If it's an alien or if it's a pit bull, who cares? There's danger around every corner. Stay strapped.
And only in America can you thus say strap. So for real. So great, amazing point. And as I said in my Don to Don episode, it is an Aeon of the Daughter series, in my opinion. Very much. There's even a girl with pink hair. And the boy is equally as important. Yeah, he's a little soy, he's a little zoomery, but we forgive you, Matt and Rom. We really do. We don't. I'm not saying either of you are soy and zoomery. Well, you are zoomery both, so. But that's okay. We accept it. It is what it is.
Hey, maybe if they do a season 2, they'll give him more masculinity. I mean, the whole point of season 1 was him trying to find his literally find his balls. So maybe if there's season 2, they'll make him less of a soy boy.
I actually don't mind it, even because I sort of like that he's sort of a nerd outside of nerds, right? Like he's like so otaku that he can't really fit in with the other otakus. So it's kind. He can't really. He's not really breaking conventions. He's kind of like in his own. That's how I kind of read it. I like that he kind of like he defies it by not being it. That's what I think. Um, I don't find him cucked. I think that he is thrown into it and he's with a bunch of like Yas Queen, like Longhouse girls or Foids or whatever that are you know, they're ready to take on the world. It's just that he has the powers in which to do so. So
Yeah.
sorry.
If I can kind of answer Joshua's question, what he was saying really quick. I'll keep it short. About local cryptids and everything. Of course, you know, in the uh, Bible Belt, we there of course we have folklores of haunted bridges. There was even one here where it said that a school bus, tipped over and everyone died in it. And if you go there at night and go on the middle of the bridge and turn off your car and sit there and wait a few moments, you'll see glowing eyes, and then you turn your car engine back on and you have your headlights turn on, and then you'll be on the other side of the bridge. And then you'll see handprints on a car. Basically, the story is that all the dead kids that died during the car crash, will push any vehicle that seems to stop on the bridge to the other side to safety. So we have all kinds of stories like that and everything. But the one that I think is that connects to Mothman is uh, the story of the butterfly people, of the Joplin tornado from a few years ago. There was the most highest recorded uh, tornado that hit Joplin, this town, and it it literally destroyed the entire town. But afterwards, there was all these stories of children and men and women being saved, and they asked who saved them miraculously, and they all had similar stories, and they was from the same area, but they wasn't directly connected, um, and they all said something similar, and that was the butterfly people saved them. Well, again, this is the Bible Belt that we're talking about here. So if it was angels that saved them, they would have said, "An angel saved me." But no, they say it's humanoids with butterfly wings. And when I think of butterfly wings, I think of the patterns, or the intricate patterns on the butterfly wings that look like similar to peacock feathers that look like eyes. I know there's different kinds of uh, angels in the Christian hierarchy that have eyes on their wings. So, and that's not normally what's taught in your more modern Judeo-Christian church that you would find from around here. So I think they are seeing angels, but had saved them, but they're not seeing the ones that they was shown on paintings and statues in their churches. They're seeing, they're not seeing saved by an angel kind of Hollywood angels. They're seeing biblically accurate angels, and the best that they can describe it as is butterfly people, to the point where those when they rebuilt the town, they have statues and different more morals of where of the butterfly people to like say thank you to these mysterious beings, and those butterflies everywhere. So I just wanted to uh, use that as a example of I guess a positive version of a Mothman cryptid.
Oh, sorry. Solar, please go, and then Matt.
No, go ahead, Matt.
Okay, so first of all, very nice. The backstory King talked about the butterfly people. I think they are the thrones and the seraphim, which are the hierarchy of angels who can have eyes. Though I'm not sure they would be necessarily human-like or like humanoid, but I think those are the ones which have eyes. That's very nice. But answering Joshua's question about like winged serpent, I didn't listen entirely to the last spaces, but if I correctly remembering your question, you asked about it in relation to America's origin story. I'm not really sure, like if it's the same, but what I know about the winged serpent is the Mesoamerican one, right? Like the Quetzalcoatl, which is basically like if really it's the same symbol, right? Like Kundalini, all this type of the energy that goes up and goes like the dragons, like the same kind of similar archetype, right? Not same, but very similar archetype. But it's very interesting that you have the animal that goes in the ground, right? Like the serpent, it can only like I don't know the word for it in English, but it can only go in the ground, right? It's like doesn't have legs, doesn't have arms and so on to hold itself, so it just goes in the ground. But then at some point, it quote unquote evolves to have wings and fly. So again, we come back to this idea, right? Having wings and like how that can be um, angelical in some way, so that can be more evolved in some way. So that's very interesting. But that's pretty much I don't know, like what the relation you were like wanting to make to the America origin, if I got that right. But that's what I know about it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, Matt. Solar, did you want to go?
Yeah,
Or
I guess I'll just make a really
yeah,
brief
go,
comment.
please go. I
Yeah,
want you
yeah,
to
no,
go.
it's all good. I don't actually have really anything on the Quetzalcoatl as it relates to like the mounds or anything like that. I'm a fairly recent arrival to putting that together. I sort of had to jump head first into the like UAP UFO type stuff just based on some personal experiences I had within the last year and kind of went from there. But I'm still like diving head first into the lore, I guess. But all I was going to say is there's something kind of unique and beautiful about the North American um, sort of inability to describe like cryptids or make sense of these sort of prehistoric mounds and things like that in any kind of a coherent way. Like your ontology, your worldview gets completely blown out when you start trying to talk about these things. And again, I know this is an oversimplification, but it seems like when you look at a lot of other civilizations, right, they have a conception of the world that includes like humans, animals, plants, some degree of like spirit beings or whatever, but they're all kind of like cleanly integrated, right? Like there's been enough time for things to sort of settle within a broader framework that includes quote unquote mythical beings and spirits as well as the, maybe more uh, easily perceived humans, plants, animals, rocks, etc. Right? But in America, you start talking about Mothman, you start talking about the Jersey Devil, even like Bigfoot. All of a sudden, you're talking about like temporal rifts that may or may not be related to like Agartha, which connects to like UAPs. And now we're talking about like Palladian Nazis, like coming in and out of the portals. I don't know. It just like immediately kind of like explodes into this like wild west of sort of semi-connected but also very discoherent ideas, right? And that's just like very cool because we get to sort of play with and move through that kind of like mythonarrative space, and use that as the sort of like raw material for building up our own like systems. I don't know. I've kind of leaned into it, and I appreciate it for what it is.
I 100% agree. I love that you said that mytho narrative. That was a great way to encapsulate that. Really, honestly, so interesting. Um, so I interpret the Quetzalcoatl. And hello, brother Dingbat. Welcome. I'm glad to see you.
Good
But
to be here. Long time listener, first time caller, you know.
well, welcome. So I'll just say one thing about Quetzalcoatl. I think of it as the Quicksilver Dragon. If you want the truth, that's how I interpret it. It's talking about something much more conceptual than it's talking about. It's talking about something like maybe in a religious or magical experience. It's not really talking about. For me, that's just for me. I'm just saying that's my perspective. It's really talking about, but maybe certain places on the map make it easier to sort of like penetrate a few densities. Like maybe it just like gives you a little in, but you still need your will to sort of pull you through. But then you also maybe some of those phenomena that Solar described and also Monty described, maybe some of those are like psychic imprints left across like the field, you could even think. Like left across this kind of vein of the Quicksilver Dragon. So really what Quetzalcoatl is kind of like these energetic points where thought forms arise, you could say, into existence appearance. And so when you tap into that, you are kind of tapping into what came before. That's sort of why it's also important to have like a more pristine or more prepared consciousness to go off of. I think it was Joshua, what he said about the alchemical. It might have been Solar. I don't know. I'm sorry. I can't remember. But I think that that's what that's about. So yeah, I think that I embrace it. Like America, the mythopoetic nation. That's what it is. And that's okay. And like maybe to acknowledge that, maybe that's like the whole like hipster like irony humor thing is that like we can acknowledge it and then we can also like we kind of like 50% know it's cringe, 50% know it's real, and we like mask that. Maybe like we build like an aggregation and we laugh. And that's how we kind of like deal with the reality that it's both true and not true at the same time. Maybe that's an interesting hermetic liminal kind of space, like, for people who feel like they have very like fixed identities. Maybe it's like a way to think of the world is like maybe being like a millennial is kind of you know a hermetic positioning. Yes, Joshua, please go ahead.
I'm really glad you brought up humor, because earlier I was kind of thinking like, well, in terms of family values, or yesod, what is the foundation, right, of happy warrior? And I think humor and laughter would have to be something, because for me it's how I cope effectively with stress, right? Is one of the easiest ways to banish some type of energy like that is to just laugh, right? So the whole divine comedy and everything is just, for me, you have to have tension in life, or it's going to be boring, right? And so I sometimes wonder if the gods, in quote unquote, as it were, angels, whatever, I think that's why they were tempted as they were when they did falls, because for them existence was really boring, right? To be incorruptible and live for thousands and thousands of years. And so part of our existence here, although mundane and ignorant as we are, is very novel. Having a novel experience is elusive to immortal beings, right? So I think that's an interesting concept to discuss, because if that's the case, then what we consider gods, when they inhabit a human, I think that's part of the appeal, is for them to have that vicarious experience of novelty,
Thank you, Joshua. As you all know, I don't worship husks, so I actually don't really think like I acknowledge the existence of gods. That's fine, but like in terms of like eternity, like maybe my view is just very Buddhist, and so it's hard for me to identify with that. I just infinity, not eternity. So, we move through the cycle of samsara, move through experiences, but we don't remain the same. We accumulate our karmas, and we have the opportunity in every life, every human life. That's why human life is particularly precious, right? Because this is our time. This is rectification. This is Yesod. The foundation is what you build of it and what you make of it. 100%. And have we been brought, I'm speaking for men, obviously there's multiple women in the room. It's no big deal. I'm just going to use my, whatever. So was there a thing that was like, yeah, this is what you should start thinking about? Yeah, maybe there were, but I think everything has changed now. So let's just think about things in a new way. And I just mean we can think about magic in a totally new way. We don't have to be fixed by so much. Obviously, take the traditional. That is good. That is rooted in something, but it doesn't have to be fixed. Roots are often not fixed. I know I was sharing garden pictures in the chat this week. So maybe that's a good metaphor, Joshua, is that you don't have to be, it's not about fix. That's why it can't be eternal. Yes, Netzach is eternity, but eternity of what? It's the light, it's the Luciferic force. That's always traveling, it's always moving through the diamond. It just looks eternal, because that's how we're perceiving it. Because our lives are short. Anyways, so that might be an interesting note to end on. If everyone's okay with that, I will obviously let my, I think we have 3 co-hosts left. Obviously, it was really late for Matt, so thank you, Matt. For coming. Obviously, Matt's a big part of the spaces, has been since we started launch the Grey Lodge and the spaces. I mean, the Friday Night Gnostic Mass and the other non-Aeon of the Daughter spaces. So thank you so much to Matt. Please check out Matt. And yeah, he's very busy. I mean, he just is. He's in the numbers, you could say. And obviously, special thank you to Chris, King of Cups YouTube. I'm sure Joshua will plug. And but thank you for speaking, and thank you for coming up as a guest co-host. And obviously, thank you to Solar. I'm sorry that I felt bad that I interrupted you, but or not interrupted you, that I spoke so at length that one time, and. But you made up for it. You rectified my mistake. So that's what a true homie does, right? And we also have to shout out Monty, because he is a true homie as well, and he asked some really great questions, really strong questions, and profound ones. And I agree. And I think it's not. I don't think it's me leading you through an idea. I think that's what's interesting. I kind of drop the title and maybe the general theme of it, and you guys come up with your own thing, because I think we're all sort of looking at things maybe not exactly the same, but we're kind of seeing something that's interesting, that's in the, as I like to say, in the either way. That's there. It's there. I feel it. It's it's almost electric. It's flux, but it's not quite. We're not quite ready to burn. We're not quite ready for gunpowder. It's just it's there though, but the potential is in the seeds, right? That's what I'm saying. It's the Gevra, right? We are not quite portioned out the right amount of fire. But maybe maybe that's also not true. Maybe it's really about, we haven't built the seeds to be able to sort of um, undergo the transmutational process in fire, because the beaches are primordial. But then there's also the idea that different kalpas, the beaches also change, but they're also in things. And the beaches are sounds and they are words, of course, but they're also ideas. So that's a lot about what Dharma talks about, how you plant seeds of Dharma in the world, is to implant dharmic ideas. They don't necessarily have to be contained strictly by Buddhist, stories or deities or anything. It's literally what we talk about every single space. Love is the cause of knowledge. Hesed is your guiding principle. Everything arises in synthesis. And you rectify it all in your mind. I know that's 4 things. So that's it. That's magic right there. So maybe 4 is actually a really good number to end on. So I'm Jin the Ninja. I host Threshold Saints. I'm going to let Joshua plug, Solar plug, and then we'll close it out. I'll close out with a room shout out. So stay tuned. Sorry about that, guys.
You can go if you like, Solar.
Yeah, I've got nothing to plug other than my account that you see here. Got an episode with Jin coming out soon. Yeah, just on the note of the number 4 and the relationship between laughter and clarity and awareness. I can't help but be reminded of the 100-syllable mantra, right? Ha 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 ho.
So 100%. He gets it. That's what it is. That's what it is to build that's what I've always said. Yandro is that's how you build Yasota consciousness. Like that's it. Whether you do that specific practice like Vajrasattva or you do one of his analogs in the higher tantras, it doesn't matter. That's how that's the practice of rectification, the sun. So I know we've got a couple Christian brethren listening in, so that's what I'm talking about. It's not any different. It's just a different, like slightly different ideas, of course, maybe different metaphysical implications, but in general, it's quite analogous.
Well,
So,
yeah, the truth is the truth, no matter who's saying it. You know what I mean? So,
well, I appreciate that. I also believe that. That's also another Buddhist, Christian sort of way we can come together because it's a very similar way of looking at the world. So, okay. Joshua, please plug and then we'll close out.
Yeah, you mentioned how truth was one of the values of Hyperborea, so it's nice to have that topic come back up again. Just yesterday or the day before, I got a shofar. I was meeting with a client, and they happened to have one, and they had just obtained it and let me buy it off of them. So I just wanted to let people know that I came across one. It's pretty cool. But anyway, it's easier probably just to follow KOK there for most of my collaborations with him. I don't really this account in of itself is focused on like scientific technocracy, New World Order kind of stuff. But over there on his channel, we do a lot of pop culture, movie, current event analysis. De-occulting things and that sort of stuff. So give us a follow over there, and I also have a link tree that I'll get around to sharing, and there's several more collaborations there, but I don't have like a central channel or anything like that to promote. But anyway, thank you so much for hosting. I appreciate this very much.
No problem, and thank you all for coming. So I'm going to do room shout outs. So we've got Chris King, the KOK YouTube channel. Thank you so much for coming. We have brother Dingbat, who is kind of like he's the father brother. I don't know, that sounds like very weird, but he kind of is. He's like, you can always turn to him when you have problems. So, or at least I do. Not like you, Solar, a different kind of problems. But yeah, always like a steadfast person that I rely on. So.
DMs are open. I'm happy to make new friends.
Thank you so much. Also, my favorite common writer niche account, definitely a follow for me. Cassandra, thank you so much. Jewelry, Taro. I always want to say Taro. I think that's my Asian thing. Like I was saying Taro, purple potato, rather than anyway. So Taro, Kabbalah, Gnosticism. Content creator, thank you, Cassandra, for coming. Shakti, Japanese yogini, wonderful Dharma practitioner, just a very healing and lovely person. Thank you so much for coming. Space Answered, our Kiwi brother John in the Northlands. We'll see what this year brings. I think interesting at the very least. And if you need any astro charts, paid work, that kind of stuff, obviously don't just ask him for free. You can ask John. Please do so. So, and Witsgut, thank you. One of my longest mutuals. I'm so glad to see you reactivate. Or I just haven't seen you in a long time, but I do remember you. I cherish mutual, of course. Ravi, thank you so much. Our Yogini, wonderful. She sends me. She'll say that I'm trying to prompt more, but she does send me very lovely, warm, long form voicemails or voice, whatever they're called. And so, yeah, it's very lovely, and I appreciate it because it's like, how do you really feel perceived in the world? If it's like you don't, people have to kind of acknowledge you, right? Like that's kind of like the consensus reality we all exist in. You kind of have to like, you have to see someone, you have to perceive someone, you have to like speak with someone, you have to be in dialectical relationship. Also think that relates back to the idea of geo-ontologies, like the kind of like the, I'm reminded solar specifically of like the burning of cedar, like doing sang offering. Like that's a way, yeah, it is kind of libtard, it is kind of like no dapple, like like all of that. I don't know more, but there's something true about it, and there's also something true about how Louis Riel saw like the kind of like Republic of Western Canada slotting into the kind of ghost dance millenarianism of the West and the gold rush. Something really interesting there with like the reality that we're coming to, because I'm kind of revisiting some of his ideas, and it's very millenarian, but maybe he wasn't talking about then, maybe he's talking about now. But maybe it doesn't even matter too. Maybe it's just like, maybe it's just conceptual and we just look at it like, yeah, he's talking about something that could be a potentiality, a seed in the world, right? That we can manifest if we so choose, if we so will it. So, maybe interesting idea. Okay, Bob Davis, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you, brother. Gunther Beagle. Okay, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you and all that who are listening in playback. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everybody who came up, and thank you special, obviously, Matt Moura. Follow Matt, Kabbalah, Tarot, Astro, does everything. He's very he's non-linear, we'll say. So thank you so much. We're the Grey Lodge. It's a plus ultra journey to the west, the modern Gnostic arc 2. So that was also interesting about arcs, right? Like someone, I think it was Joshua, I think he brought up the idea of arcs and what they are, or it was Chris. The arc is what you build of it. That's why the daughter burnt it down twice, because it was insufficient in portion, could not contain the fullness of loving kindness. Maybe that's what it's saying. It's like we have to build the ark here now. And that's what a lot of Hermeticism seems to also be saying. It's what a lot of Buddhism also seems to be saying. Like the story of Adam, the story of Shem, or for the girls, the story of Nuria. That's you. That's like for right now. So, I think that's the most I think that's the most Kabbalistically interesting way to look at things right now. So I think we'll leave it on that. Have an amazing night. Everybody be safe. Do your sadhanas or your practices or your yoga or whatever you're doing. And dance. Don't be, it's okay to be a little decoherent. It's okay. So, peace out.